Call this meeting in order. Could you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Board member reports. I will start today from right to left. So, Mr. Massey.
Mr. Chair.
And new business.
Yes. One item I do want to bring up is a discussion I have been having with the YMCA in their interest to come to town. I know we spoke about it briefly as a board. I spoke with the Facilities Master Plan Committee. They asked me to debrief the board, which I'd like to do. However, I spoke to the YMCA and they won't put anything in paper until we find out a piece of land. So, kicking it back to us to look for a piece of land where they can start the discussions with the town on their interest to move to North Reading. They are looking for a minimum of 3 to 4 acres. This YMCA idea was a really good conversation that I had with them. They'd like to, the town of Reading, their YMCA is bursting at the seams. So the town of Reading is incentivized to want to expand. They want to expand into North Reading, and they want the YMCA, Reading YMCA is interested. The town of Reading would be interested in paying a portion of those costs to come to North Reading. North Reading would match that. This all comes with, you know, a very disclaimer of this is all part of negotiations. Nothing is on paper. This is all napkin talking, phone call talking. So YMCA, in my opinion, right now is a competing project with the current intergenerational center that is being planned. The reason why I consider that a competitive project, and I use that word, is it offers a lot of the same ideas that intergenerational center would. This would take a lot of the cost off the town of North Reading if you are into an intergenerational center. They offer great services like childcare, pools, lifeguards that are certified that the town wouldn't have to pay to certify. There is a lot that can go into this. Again, I just wanted to really touch upon this, and I wanted to ask Mr. Gilberto or Mrs. McKnight if they'd be interested in coming up with a few pieces of parcels that the YMCA could look at and come to us with some thoughts. There are a lot of benefits if it were to come. I won't get too into it, but an intergenerational center would bring the full costs on the town of North Reading and its taxpayers. It would bring the full cost of operation, maintenance, and liability to the town of North Reading. So this idea I thought was a great idea for a replacement of that project. Now, kind of kicking it back to us to find a piece of land, which we can do, and we can give them a couple options to come forward with us with something in writing. Now, it would be up to us to negotiate how we plan to negotiate, but just an idea I wanted to bring forward. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Massey. And that's something we can follow up with the town planner, Mr. Gilberto, after on the land part of it. Ms. Gonzalez?
I don't have anything other than mentioning the passing of former President Carter. Love or hate his politics, he was a great humanitarian. I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Mr. Walner?
Yeah, just on the YMCA idea, you know, we have to hear from Public Services Director as well, because that's what the Intergeneration Community Center is all about, is vet services, youth services, Parks and Rec, and COA. So YMCA doesn't specialize in 3 out of those 4. So we need to hear from public services whether or not that makes sense for our town. Even though I realize building an intergenerational community center is a challenge. It's a huge challenge and may never get built as well if we don't figure out a way to get it done. Anyways, so on the, let's see. Are you going to be talking about Lori Chuckle leaving?
Yeah, but go ahead.
No, the shared committee, so I don't want to say. Well, anyways.
Say it anyway.
Yeah, Lori Chuckle
He
is.
he doesn't shy away from that.
Yeah, well, it's his committee, so I don't, I mean,
Yeah,
it's his-
Laurie's terrific.
Yeah, Lori Checkle just left us at the end of this year. She's been leading the Conservation Committee for the last 20 years, has been an excellent advocate for the town, has done many things that we'll never know about, and she's been really fair. You know, I've only worked with her a few times. I knew her from her son and I went to school together. I've known her from that point of view, but we've done more over the Forest Committee, over the most recent, and she's been very, you know, she's concerned about conservation, but she's also practical in how she implemented it. And I thought she was a really well-balanced leader in running that group, and it's going to be a big loss for them. She moved out of state, otherwise she'd still be here. But, you know, to Lori, we all wish her best for all she contributed to the town. Really excellent service. So you can feel free to add on to that as well.
I'll piggyback on it.
But, and then, you know, I've been saying forever, the Youth Services Committee needs to go beyond advisory and become more of providing hours to Eleanor and her group. They've actually set up a youth services signups where people can now volunteer hours and contribute to it. It's a formalized process which really kind of fulfills that goal, which has been a 2-year goal for them to do that. So I give them a lot of credit for getting that done. For the Forest Committee, we continue to focus on the trails at Swan Pond. The one hurdle we've had, which we're working with the town on, maybe Michael can update us if there's an update, is that we just have to get the definition between accessibility and ADA compliance and what that all means. And there's like 3 different governing groups that define this. And what we're trying to do with the Swan Pond Trails is to not disturb the natural environment. We're not looking to pave, we're not looking to do anything else like that. But we do have one trail that is more accessible than others if you are mobility challenged. So that just raised a bit of contention. We put together a packet for town council to look at. We're looking to get some sort of expert opinion because right now we have conflicting information about that. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Mr. Larry?
All right, just a few things I want to touch on that other people have also. But before that, I just want to say Hillview again continues to look at the feasibility and the investment that needs to be made in the function hall facility. They're moving forward with looking at the financial viability of putting that money into it or whether we should be abandoning it. It will be reporting to us this spring, I would think, to talk about a game plan and bounce some ideas off of us as to what they have found and what their proposals may be. But just to put it on everybody's radar screen, as we've been saying over the last few months, you know, we appropriated the money, you know, over $2 million for a new roof on a facility that doesn't give us any return on investment per se, nor has it ever in the 35 or 37 years, 35 years that it's been on our books. But it's, you know, they just felt as though it was incumbent upon them to take a good, strong look at the financial viability of investing into this facility and what's best for the next generation to come. So we look forward to the results of their labor-intensive look at it, and I would expect in the next few months they'll be looking for some additional feedback from us based upon what they have come up with. Yeah, Lori Checkle, Conservation Commission. I was going to talk about Lori, and again, her term has finally expired, and she's no longer a member of the Conservation Commission. But most of you may not know, you know Lori a bit, but I mean, I've known Lori and her family. She's like a 5th generation in this community. Her great-grandparents were here, as far as I know, and there's probably some people before them. But she's like the 5th generation of her family. So she's been extremely committed to this community since birth, through blood, and just quietly gone about the business of conservation and environmental protection for our community over the years, and as you say, has done it extremely fairly. She has an educational background and professional background, which augmented the service in that committee for a number of years, which is going to be very difficult to replace. But we're fortunate that she has mentored a number of people that are serving for us now, interviewed people who that we have all appointed to the committee, and is leaving us in very good shape. But it's going to be a tremendous void to fill, and she has just done a terrific job for us, and extremely grateful for that. And I think at some point, if we could just put together some sort of a citation under the signature of the chair to forward to her, I think they're going to have something for her around the 18th or something like that.
Oh, I hadn't heard that.
Oh,
Okay.
oh, they're looking to do something
They're putting
mid-month, yeah.
together, yeah, some sort of.
But if we could just have a citation, even if it's mailed to her, I think it would be a small gesture of appreciation. Is certainly warranted for the years of service that she put in. And again, it's not an easy task being on the Conservation Commission, because for the most part, you have to say no to a lot of people a lot of the time. And in all the years that I've sat here and she sat there, I've never heard a complaint about the way that people were handled, the way that the situation was taken care of, and that people understood when they couldn't do what they wanted to do. She has just a very good knack of letting people know how much latitude they had and what they could and couldn't do. So she just did a terrific job, and again, has left us in very good shape. So it's greatly appreciated. Just on the YMCA, I mean, this subject matter was brought to the town administrator and administration probably a year and a half ago, Michael, at least maybe 2 years ago. The plan was a little bit different at that point, because they were talking about building a facility down by the skating rink right off of Haverhill Street. Commitment on the town of Reading's part wasn't quite made at that point, and then circumstances changed, administration has changed down there. It's certainly worth taking a look at, but to Rich's point, how much of our needs can be met, and some of the needs that we have and want to maintain, the programs that we want to maintain, going to need a home to do it. So it's certainly worth looking into, and I know that a member of the board of directors, the YMCA, brought it to the administration and called me about it at least probably 2 years ago.
Yeah.
There's been ongoing conversations, but it's certainly worth taking a look at, and but it's still very much in the infancy stages, I'm well aware.
To make clear, Mr. Earlier, just to address that real quick, because there is one big portion that I left out. And again, I tried to sum this up because there isn't anything in writing, but the one thing I did mention to them was that the intergenerational center is a huge portion of that idea was to serve the seniors. I made that very clear. I even said, hey, give me the ammunition to be able to sell it to the community, to the seniors, because the seniors need to be taken care of. Now, fiscally responsibly, I'm just thinking that if you're into an intergenerational center, how much money you could sink in. And that's why, from a fiscally responsible standpoint, this is the right way to go. They are willing to work with the Council on Aging. They're willing to work with the Senior Center, willing to work at such a low rate that you'd be shocked. But again, nothing's in writing. I will make sure to get everything in writing and present it to you.
Again, don't get me wrong, this isn't poo-pooing the idea, because there is a certain economies of scale when you're partnering with, private industry or private enterprise to provide services, and you can do it, partner with them, with municipalities. It's a great idea, because again, you're not putting all the people on the payroll, on the municipal payroll, and the cost of services or shared responsibility on covering those costs certainly saves money, absolutely. So
and
it's,
from my understanding, I believe you would get,
pardon me?
and from my understanding, I would believe a big portion of that would be paid by state grants for towns working together. Is that
Are you
correct?
talking about building, or are you talking about maintaining the programming? No, I'm talking about the ongoing cost of the programming, which is what you have to look at too. You can invest in a facility, we can give them a piece of land and, that's worth a certain percentage of the contribution, but then you have to maintain the facility, and you have to do, who's gonna do that and how that's done. And if we can share those costs by paying a fee annually to them, and then they absorb the hiring of the people and the maintenance of the facility and all the rest, it can be a win. But depending upon the amount of programming, the types of programming that are going to be offered there, does it truly meet our needs for the investment that's going to be made? And it's certainly worth looking into. And I know it was ongoing. The discussion's been ongoing for a while, and I look forward to hearing more.
I'll never forget when I was running for the position I'm in now, that folks with kids used to say that my kids have nowhere to go in town, so to this, I think that would be an answer.
So, just a couple of other things. One is, again, I was going to mention the passing of President Carter. Again, a person who devoted the vast majority of his life to public service, regardless of politics. And even when he was out of office, just a great humanitarian. And he was a tremendous public service to the country, and we mourn his loss, but grateful for his presence for sure. The other thing I want to mention is that, today down in DC, the next step in the transfer of peaceful transfer of power has taken place, which is fantastic. It was great to see and hear what transpired today as opposed to what happened 4 years ago. And I can only hope, I think we should all hope and pray, that continued spirit carries through for the rest of this administration that's coming in, and that our Congress people and our representatives do their job and uphold the Constitution and make sure that our rights are not alienated or diminished. And today was the first step in the right direction. And it's also the 4-year anniversary of what occurred 4 years ago, which was, I don't know anybody that thought that was a great thing.
We won't go there, because.
Thank God. Thank God we're only selecting.
Guess what?
Excuse me, it all starts here.
Time out.
It all starts here. And again, it was good to see, and it's good to hear, and it's good to
Not
see
necessary.
that they're willing to work together and get it done. There was no denial of what the elections were, there was none of that. It's just smooth transition, and it's going to take place on the 20th of January, Jim, and that's the way it should be, and we should hope that it always is. So I just wanted to make mention of that. I'm all set, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
My turn, we're gonna bring it back local. No, I'm gonna wrap this up local, so.
I have a question to his new business.
No,
Just like
no,
the
no,
other
no, 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 no,
questions
please,
are on. Okay,
please.
that's-
So, I do think though, on the ideas of both things, looking at the YMCA and looking at everything, it's that we've been looking at this one way, and this is something the facilities master plan needs to talk about. We can talk about a strategic planning. But if it would be great to have everybody in one building, but if it turns out that you could have a combination of the YMCA serving X and the numbers work, and a smaller, more brand new modern senior center, that could work too. I know that, because I think that it's been this idea that we all have to be under the same roof, and that's great, but if you have the numbers for everything, it might be that the YMCA can work, and so can a brand new facility that would do something for whatever the needs are, the full needs for seniors. Because I'm just assuming that if we're trying to stick maybe 100 or 200 people in the room at once, it's a lot cheaper than trying to stick 600-700 people in a room at once. So again, just an idea, and I'm not saying either way, but I think that you need all these numbers to make the right call, one way or the other. So, and now,
It's worth looking at.
that's it. Mr. Gilberto, tell us what's on the menu for the special town meeting.
Take a public comment.
Oh, after public comment. Thank you. So would anyone like to speak? Not a member of the select board? 1 second. Anyone online?
I'm not seeing anybody, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. I will close public comment. Mr. Massey?
I just wanted to ask more about the Hillview building, can I?
Oh, that was the question?
Yeah, I wanted to ask about his new business.
Okay, okay, go ahead. But can we keep it short, the question? Just so we, because they're here too, I just don't want to keep them too long.
So, Mr. O'Leary, the Hillview building, can you provide me a little context into what's going on inside that committee? I'd like to understand what the goal is, what the vision is, because didn't we just pour some money into it to renovate the upstairs?
No. No. Probably 5 years ago, we put money into the kitchen and the pub, and a little bit into the kitchen upstairs. Other than that, no. Any of the renovations to the inside of the facility is done by the vendor who's leasing it out right now, the licensee. So Mr. Yeber, who was there before, made substantial renovations to the function hall, as has the new people that are in there now. Ultra Chic have made substantial improvements to the inside of the facility, not the commission, not the taxpayers. Excuse me, taxpayers haven't spent a dime on this building, by the way. It's all been the enterprise that's paid for everything, not the taxpayers.
Any thoughts on the pub downstairs?
The
What's the status of the pub?
The status of the pub is, depending upon the licensee, if they wish to go through the machinations of reopening and opening it up, that's up to them, not us. They hold the license, the liquor license there, and the common victuals license. So whoever's licensed to operate the facility has the opportunity to do so. Ultra Chic people who are there right now do not have substantial experience in restaurant business. They're contemplating doing something with it, but they haven't taken the leap.
How long is the contemplation going to take? Because I can't tell you how many times I get phone calls about people wanting to go in and stop in for a beer after they
Yeah,
go.
I don't, to be honest with you, I don't know
It's
that,
been shut down forever.
Right, I
think we
just-
should start
but
working
again,
on that.
the two previous license holders shut it down. Mr. Lee, who had it, shut it down. Mr. Yevis opened it, shut it down. Economically, and these are people who have been in the restaurant business, economically, it hasn't been a viable operation for years as a regular pub operation. Again, it's very seasonal, and again, during the golf season, parking is always an issue for that facility because your bread and butter is the golf. The golfers take up most of the parking lot during the day and evening, and in summertime when the sunset is late. It's always, people drive by thinking that the pub was busy, and it never was. The parking lot was full, but it was golfers. So it's a challenge. And then this time of year, you'd have to rely on local people to go in and again, it's had a history of 35 years there. The first 25, 26 years was with Mr. Burton Page. He made it operate and run, but he also knew how to run the facilities. He was a function hall guy, but knew how to run a restaurant. And what he did is, that was like a loss leader. It kept his employees paid all year, and it didn't make a lot of money except during golf season. But it made enough to keep his people on staff. But, you know, I'd be happy to talk to you about it,
Yeah.
as to the economics of it. And again, you know, we've had people on the commission who have experience in restaurant, function hall, facilities, business that serve on the commission. None of them have ever advocated that this was a viable operation for a regular, ongoing restaurant on a regular basis. But we haven't talked about it.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mr. Chair, has there been any thought to, over the years, to put public comment additionally on top of the beginning of the meeting, but at the end of the meeting?
Just No, it's an agenda item, and we do it earlier because the number one complaint across the board, across demographics, across ages, is that our meetings go too long. So if we put this at the end, then the first thing people are gonna tell me is that
Can you do both?
do it once.
We had it at the end for
That's the answer.
a long time,
We had it at the end, and
and nobody was happy about it.
no one was happy because no one could get to speak.
You can have it at both. I think the issue is that some people feel that we talk about everything after public comment. So we go through the meat of the meeting, and folks that may have comments maybe want to ask questions to what we just talked about, but can't.
We're here every 2 weeks.
Oh,
Well, we are, I'm just saying.
you're the
And
chair.
usually, and also people can get some more information during that period.
Understood.
The other thing.
No, we're not gonna have it, no, it's not on the agenda,
No, no,
that's it, we are
no,
moving
public
on.
comment, just what public comment
We're moving on
is.
to the special town, that's it,
But-
no more. Thank you. Mr. Gilberto.
Okay, I'll give you a thought afterwards.
Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, we have had an evolving draft of the warrant, as I think everybody in the, well, at least everyone in the front part of the room is aware. So I'm just going to, for your reference, hand out paper copies so everyone has a version that we're working off of. In the meeting packet was I believe, 7-article special town meeting warrant that included an abbreviated Article 3 relative to amending the zoning bylaws for the floodplain district. The version I'm passing out here incorporates what was emailed to the board late this afternoon and what was reviewed by the Planning Commission at a meeting a little bit earlier this evening. So it's all sort of aggregated in one spot. Where this is a special town meeting and where the turnaround time is very short, and that we're asking for the warrant to be signed this evening for a meeting to take place at the end of January 27th. I thought it might be good for us to go through the articles, which we've listed on the agenda for tonight's meeting, and just sort of take them in order. Probably the best person to speak to the first 3 articles will be the town planner. Danielle, I don't know if you need access to make a presentation. You should be able to do so there. And once you're ready to go, if you could just share the presentation out through Zoom as well, that would be good.
Michael, are these TVs up?
This one will, I think, only show who's on the Zoom.
Okay.
I can,
Okay.
actually, it won't. It's not
It's
gonna
fine.
be
It's fine.
Sorry.
Okay.
I know it's like right in
That's
front
okay.
of you.
I'll crank my neck.
Okay, the first article, Article 1, is something that the CPC is bringing forward to a special town meeting because, as we've heard, state law is now allowing accessory dwelling units by right in all communities in Massachusetts beginning on February 2nd, 2025. North Reading zoning bylaws don't currently regulate or allow ADUs. Our zoning bylaws do, however, regulate accessory uses and structures. And so the proposed bylaws that the CPC has brought forward would amend our existing accessory uses, accessory structures, and definitions section of the zoning to adopt the definition that's consistent with the state's definition of accessory dwelling units, and would provide some additional dimensional regulations. In the absence of these bylaw changes, the current setbacks for the accessory structures would assume to apply. And our current setbacks for accessory structures are quite small. They would allow these units to be within 10 feet of a property line. The CPC wanted to make sure that people had more space so as not to be quite so close to accessory dwelling units on a neighbor's property. So the proposed bylaw makes the setback stricter, making it the same as for primary dwellings. That was my quick overview of Article 1. Did you want me to stop for any questions, or should I keep going?
I think there was just one area where town council had sort of commented on something that we were looking to do with regard to the relationship with the regulations that came out. I don't know if you could just comment on that.
Oh, yes. It was, the issue was, what was the issue?
That was related
before
to
Christmas.
detached structures, was it?
Yes, that's right. So initially, town council, thank you. Initially, town council had advised us that we could, if we wanted to, put in the bylaw a prohibition on detached accessory dwelling units, meaning like a carriage house or a garage or a separate structure. But once the state issued regulations, town council determined that no, the state really did confirm that detached accessory dwelling units do need to be allowed by all communities. So initially, our draft said that there would be a prohibition on detached units, but on town council's advice, the CPC did remove that provision because we are very confident and got confirmation from the state that that would not be permitted to stand.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Mr. Rudloff, did anyone want to add on that article?
Nope.
Mr. Griffin? Mr. Township, is that correct?
Just a quick question. So there's nothing, as far as proposed bylaw, make the setbacks the same as the primary dwelling. So So I think I read in another community that they required it to be like in the backyard as opposed to the front yard and side yard and things of that nature. Ours doesn't do that. Ours just is this, whatever the setbacks are for a primary unit.
You the same.
Yeah, it'd be like a garage. You know, you put a garage up front, you put a shed over here. So same thing. So
That's correct.
it's
Yeah.
not,
It can't be more restrictive than the existing zone, you know,
Right.
for the primary dwelling.
Yeah.
So if the primary dwelling is 50-foot setback, then the ADU has to be 50 feet.
and what is for primary dwelling, what is the current?
40,
Side-
25, and
For
50.
RA, 25 side yard, right?
40 feet in the front, 25 on the side, and 50 in the back.
Otherwise, it would be 10 on all sides if we were to
Yeah.
default to what we have.
No, I appreciate the effort that's been put into it to at least address the, again, I think with the carte blanche law that was put in there, you're talking about, if you look at the lots in city and the urban areas, I mean, they're 5,000 square feet or 3,500 square feet, you know.
Right.
So, yeah, the setbacks would be, 10 feet is not reasonable. So I appreciate your efforts in culling out what we can and can't do and making it more workable and reasonable for the community in relation to privacy and infringement or encroachment on neighbors' property. So I appreciate your efforts. Thank you.
Mr. Massey, the Article 1 for past town meetings has been board member reports. Do we not have that in this one?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, so we customarily have that article for our annual town meetings for June and October. I don't know that there's anything that precludes a report from being offered, but we're trying to the extent that we could limit the scope of the meeting.
Understood.
And I can talk further about that when we get to the financial articles.
Mr. Waller?
Just a quick question. I tried to read through all of this, but never saw anything about sewage in particular. Is that just assumed that they have to, whatever they have in the ground, if they add a unit, they have to expand their, is that just, is that already in here?
Yeah, basically, the building permit that would be required would have to have a sign-off from the Board of Health, which means if they have an existing four-bedroom home and they want an existing four-bedroom system and they want to add a bedroom on, they would, yes, have to expand their system or eliminate one of the other bedrooms. I mean, there'd have to be something done to make sure they didn't violate the code. So, yeah. It is somewhat of a control thing. I mean, it sounds like a little bit of like the Wild West when they opened it up as a and I know that's what you think.
That's what I'm thinking of.
What can you do? But actually, because we are all because we're on septic, we don't have sewer, we actually have another level of control that some of the other places wouldn't have. So on the one hand, not having sewer becomes a little bit of a benefit.
Yeah. I would just say during town meeting, I'm just suggesting, think about it, is that, while you're showing this, the next slide should say, by the way, these rules still apply to the accessory dwelling, just like it would a house, and that there's no, there is no Wild West, there is no,
Right.
we're breaking other rules, this is the only things we're talking about,
Right.
just to let people feel good about it.
I have a question though on, it's the same level of like enforcement,
Right.
right? So I'm just trying to play the scenario. Somebody gets denied, they do it anyways, we find out, what's the recourse? Or is it just, we just send a nasty letter for the next 20 years till the guy dies?
I would say that most likely, if the reason that they were out of compliance was the fact that they didn't have an adequate septic system, the Board of Health could certainly shut them down. It has the powers to stop them. But one of the problems the building inspectors had, these are very this is a very difficult thing to keep an eye on for them to make sure that everybody does the right thing. So that is an issue. But in that particular instance, if it was a septic system rated issue, the Board of Health does have the power to say, you don't have an adequate system, cease and desist, fix the system, or get rid of the extra room.
And I only mention it because it's easy to, you can hide another bedroom, right? Pretty easily, but if all of a sudden there's like a new structure next to your house, that's gonna be hard to hide. So I feel like that's gonna be more obvious that it's like, well, what's that? You know, so I'm just saying that, because I think to your point, that, it seems like as soon as it can be a health issue, that's like the biggest sword we have on a lot of things, because they, you know, have an extraordinary authority when it comes to things like that. So I just feel that, you know, now it's a matter of whether or not we can catch them then. Catch, bad word, but you know what it is. But it's the truth. Like, people are gonna do it just like now. There's probably some now. I mean, like every town has. So it's just a matter that, you know, I just don't want it to be that, and maybe we have no choice, where it's that if the precedent is set, that it becomes just a slap on the wrist, and then it becomes this like back and forth between the town, Board of Health, and the person. I mean, it could be there for a while, and then next thing you know, it just 10 years later, it's still, I mean, it's realistic, like you see it happen. So that's why, you know, I don't know, it's more, do we have the resources? That's a different thing.
I think as, with the controls that we have, with our Board of Health and with the setbacks and everything, I think there are not going to be as many of these as you might think. There's been a lot of questions to the building inspector. He's mentioned to us he's received a number of calls, but we don't know how many of them turned out, oh no, I'm never going to do that, and walked away. So I don't know that because of the restrictions that we have, it may not be as prevalent as you might think.
So the only thought that I was thinking about with this is that I remember we approved some single, and I'm just hypothetically using this as an example, because I think that this may be something to think about too. Any home, say within the last year or two, that's been approved, and there's going to be, you know, like Anthony Road, for instance, there's 7 homes going in there. My fear is that if the contractor comes back and wants to put in 7 ADUs, because that's the time to do it, when the property is under construction or before it's under construction. So we've approved that for certain numbers, and then will that particular, and that was only 7 homes, so if you multiplied it out and they put 900 square foot ADUs in their basements and utilized their space and whatever they had to do, that makes a lot of sense, because the developer is spending money and the project is ongoing. So my fear is that, you know, how many properties were built or being built or in process that are gonna come back to the table? And if that were the case, you know, how is that going to affect?
Well, I can answer the Anthony Road one. So the Anthony Road one.
Well, I just used as an example.
No, but it's a good one, because it's pretty recent, but that had to go through a site plan review through us. And so the new law states that the same thing would apply. It can't be more restrictive, but if they wanted to do that, they'd actually have to come back to us.
Right.
And they'd have to ensure that all the same runoff and all the things that were problematic for Anthony Road, and I think it would only get worse if you added more structures. But it would come back to the CPC, unlike most where it's by right. So most of it is by right. That'd be, the example you're using would have to come back to the CPC.
Well, that was a water table issue. Maybe that wasn't a great example.
Well, no, but it's, you know,
but
it's
I'm just saying, any new development that's going in, or the developer, most certainly, I would believe, if within the scope it's there, the benefit for him to build that new house and to put the ADU in now would be far greater than, say, you putting it detached on your property. It's a lot easier to accomplish.
So they would just make sure they have the correct septic system that would go with the ADU, whether detached or attached.
Like, it'd just be like building a 5-bedroom house.
So they would have to just revise the plans, and as long as they adhere to the setbacks and.
Right. So I mean, that's my only thing. Like, I think that developers will probably look at this, and the builders are going to look at this. Some will probably consider it, and that just is going to, I believe, add to, you know, a population, schools, blah, 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 and all that stuff. So just something to think about. I was kicking around when we were looking at this. So that's just my thought.
Mr. Griffin, why do you think it's advantageous for the builder to do that? Do you feel like they would be pushing it as a rental property?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, definitely.
Not for your aging parents to move.
No, that is irrelevant. That has nothing to do with it under this new law.
For both, you know, I mean, but I think if you're gonna build, it's gonna make the property more valuable and, you know, money talks for.
It makes sense to do it at that time.
I see them adding those.
And it may not get used as an ADU now, right? Just because typically people buying those homes are not those that needed to rent out. Just from the price point of
Well,
somebody's.
no, yeah, that's
So-
true, but the next person that buys
I
that
don't know,
house.
maybe it makes it affordable for someone who couldn't afford that house because they can rent something
Well,
else.
let's talk affordable. ADU is not affordable housing, correct?
No, it's
That's
actually
not.
It's actually
ADUs also
in the-
adds to your housing, right? So now North Reading's getting close to that 10% affordable housing. This will only push us farther away, correct?
When you don't get any credit. like
Yeah.
you said.
There's no, I don't think there's a tax benefit either. I'm not.
It
No.
doesn't get counted, I don't believe, as
No, it
a
doesn't get-
single family, an additional unit against
It's
your.
an affordable unit, yeah.
Yeah,
not
so
even
I don't
a
think it
single
impacts
family.
you as far as the affordability aspect of it.
They're not considered to be affordable units on our subsidized housing inventory, they're considered to be market rate units. So
Right.
whether it's a single family house or an apart, or a condo,
Right.
you know, any unit in the
Right.
town counts as a market rate
Right.
unit. So it does,
Pushes us away.
So it will
right, we
be,
do lose
Yeah.
money.
it will be a unit, so it kind of changes the map in the wrong direction.
In the wrong direction that we've been working so hard to go with.
Thank you. Another question here. You've got here, ADUs are limited to one, sorry. No more than one additional parking space shall be required for an ADU.
Yeah, on the street,
The state's guidelines, which I've gone through exhaustively, we cannot be more strict than these guidelines, correct?
No.
So this
That's
says,
a prohibition.
a requirement of more than one additional on-street or off-street parking space for each protected use ADU on a lot if all portions of such lot are located outside a 0.5-mile radius of a transit station. So, are they required to give 2 parking spots? By the letter of that?
It's either or, it's one, and then we're not
We're not.
located within .5,
Yeah,
so
right,
that,
yeah.
that one doesn't
That
affect
doesn't
North
count.
Reading.
Exactly. Located outside a 0.5-mile radius of a transit station requires you more than one additional on-street or off-street parking space for each protected use ADU on a lot. That is page 4 of the
So
guidelines.
help me with that, because if you're closer to a mass transit, you would not need a parking space. That's where they would relieve you, so I'm not following you. Are you saying that?
Yeah, it says not.
Just by what's in there. So I think what they're saying is that, yes, if you're beyond 0.5 miles, you have to give a second parking spot.
Oh, beyond, you're
Beyond.
saying?
Yeah, because you're
Yeah.
outside.
More than one, it
Yeah.
says,
Walking
right?
distance.
Yeah, there's no-
I didn't really read that.
You can't
But
require
where-
more than, you can't require more than one. They can put in more than one,
Yeah.
but you can't require, by bylaw, you
Would
can't
you-
require more than
Is that
one
the
additional
guidelines?
spot.
Minimum parking requirements. A requirement of
Is that
more than
the
one
guideline?
additional on-street or off-street parking spot.
Can be
I'm
required.
confused.
Yeah.
Is that the
Yeah,
guideline?
is that
Yeah.
valid,
Or is that the law?
This is the guidelines.
Which is,
No, they're the same. So
Yeah.
what that means is that towns are not allowed to require more than one space anywhere. But if we are located close to a transit station, we're not allowed to require any parking. That's what that
You
means.
can-
We're
it's waived.
requiring the most that we're allowed to require, which is one space. That's what that means.
that's kind of how I read it too.
Right.
Yeah.
If you're within the half a mile, you can't require any spots,
Right.
because people don't need a car and they can walk supposedly to public transit. If you're outside of a half a mile, you can't require any more than the one, a minimum of one, the minimum of one spot. They don't want the cities and towns to be able to say, oh, in order to have that, you have to have 2 or 3 parking spots, because it might render the lot, ineligible to do it. But so you can't require more than one. The minimum amount, you can't require more than one if you're outside a half mile.
It's objective.
So what they're proposing here comes into compliance with what the law is.
I might read differently. My apologies.
I'll look at it again.
Special permits for multiple ADUs in the same lot. This says ADUs are limited to one per principal dwelling.
by right.
So if they apply for special permits, they can put,
Yep.
if you have a 10-acre lot, you could put 10 ADUs.
So we have not offered an option of having additional ADUs by special permit. And for those communities that do allow it, the requirement is only one per property. So if you have 10 units, any one of them can have it, but only one can have it. That's how it was explained to me by town council.
For multifamily, like,
Okay.
if you have a multifamily lot.
You could still only have one ADU.
Dwelling, or whatever, a multifamily building, call it, they can still only have one ADU on that, they couldn't have four. But your point, though, if you already have one, and you're looking
And you're
at
at a second.
you can do that with a special permit, that's what it's down in here.
Okay.
Give you the section.
I do have some more questions. I'm not sure if I'm taking up too much time or if I'm going on. I'd rather squeeze them all in.
Now's the time.
And I apologize, I have a hard stop, but these folks know I have to actually do a pickup, so I apologize.
Modular dwelling units, I've said this to a couple folks sitting here today. My concern on a modular dwelling unit, every single day I sit in a construction trailer that is a modular unit. Take off the wheels of that modular unit, it becomes a permanent unit. Can anyone just plop a construction trailer in their backyard and consider it an
That's a good question.
Bring your trailer down.
EDU? I mean it, and the only reason I mean it is because when I ran for this position, I ran to keep this town small and keep it small town feel. This is exactly the wild, wild west if you can bring construction trailers in.
I 100% agree. Daniel, what's your opinion on that? We have a trailer, we do have a trailer bylaw, if you will, mobile homes.
But that's just a mobile home. though.
Trailer different than modular.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a different thing. I don't think there's any language.
I don't think so either. I don't think there's any prohibition on it being modular. It can't be a trailer though.
Any requirement that prohibits, regulates, or restricts a modular dwelling unit from being used as a protected use ADU that is more restricted than the Mass State Building Code.
Right, so that's saying we can't do that. So there's no.
If the Mass State Building Code allows, you can do
Oh
it.
yeah, if,
Right.
but if they don't, then no. I don't understand.
Then build a construction trailer that's to code.
Maybe. I mean, if people can get around it that way, then maybe
Yeah,
they
it has to
can.
be hooked up to sewer, or
Yeah.
septic in this case,
Understood.
water and all that, yeah.
If it meets all the regulations.
In order to
Energy
get an
code, you gotta put
occupancy,
insulation
in order to get an occupancy permit, it would have to pass inspection by the building inspector, board of health, et cetera. So I think that if you tried to just take a blank construction trailer type thing and drop it, I don't think it would make the grade, so.
Got a closet, got a window, got a bathroom.
Yeah.
Just saying, I'm just saying, the law opens it up to people that are looking to make it, yes, creative, and can read
Yeah.
contracts. Last thing I'd like to bring up is enforceability of restrictions and regulations on pre-existing ADUs. We cannot enforce
Right.
restrictions on existing ADUs. If I'm a developer right now, or if I'm in the trades, or if I know someone in the trades, I'm gonna run plumbing up to my garage ASAP before this passes. To say, hey, I'm gonna put a wet bar in the garage, I'm gonna pull a permit, I'm gonna run plumbing under there, then when you go away, I'm gonna make a kitchen. My concern is that if that garage is massive, let's say it fits an 18-wheeler or a work truck or a work van, I'm concerned that 900 square foot ADUs can grow pretty easily. If you're saying, hey, this was an existing ADU.
Well, the problem is you have a 3-week window before that happens. I mean, once the law goes into effect, I think all of these rules in the bylaw after the town meeting, if the town votes for it, you'd be regulating at that point. Our building inspector would be regulating. Is there a window right now of 3 weeks? Yeah.
Yeah, that's what, yeah. It's just a minor
Couple
concern.
of weeks,
back.
wherever we are out from third or second.
Right.
Yeah, I do see what you're saying, yeah. It's
Thanks.
possible.
Last,
You're giving a lot of people ideas, Mr. Mayor.
Hey.
That's what I'm working with, so.
Oh, believe me, they probably already know.
hey, they're there. You can read through it. I just want the people to understand the limits in which people can go with this.
It's
Because
very-
I've
it's
tried so
very
hard
broad.
to find a yes to this, and I just,
It's very broad for a
Can't.
first,
Um,
into this step.
now, unreasonable regulation. What, you cannot impose excessive costs on the use or development of a protected use ADU without significant gain in advancing the municipality's legitimate interest. I'd like to talk about taxes. I'm so happy we have our assessor here. Don't mean to put you on the spot. You build an ADU, let's just say this room is a property. We charge this property $10,000 a year. We put an ADU out back, I'm using round numbers, call it $2,000-3,000 we gain in taxes for an ADU. Just give 30%. I'm probably being a little bit not conservative with that. The issue I have is that we charge, or our cost for the town, approximately $20,000 to send a student to school. Isn't this a huge losing proposition for the town in losing money if someone moves in that ADU, or even
Swaps.
the seniors go into the ADUs, which typically most happen, and then you put your kids and their kids, the grandchildren, into the house. We're immediately 17 grand into it for every student that comes into an ADU or comes onto that property and starts living in this community. We're immediately losing money, immediately, and that could get exponential. I'm talking about a town that just went on an override. This could be terrible. This could sink us big time. Is there any way, and this is really, I'm trying to find a way to say yes, is there any way, and I know there's laws on how you can tax, is there any way to be able to tax ADUs differently, double the tax rate?
Mrs. Carbone, would you like to answer that?
No.
I can.
I'm sorry.
And now I put you on the spot.
Put you on the spot.
So the ADUs, you cannot tax in a different manner than how you would tax the primary house. The primary house is taxed on the square footage of the house, the contents, quality of construction, so on and so forth. The ADU has to be treated and taxed fairly in the same manner. Does that answer your
Taxed
question?
fairly.
Fairly. I can't double tax them just because they're an ADU. I can't.
What are the boundaries that we can get to not make this a losing proposition? I guess that's probably a better question.
That's not gonna
I
happen.
don't think.
That's easy.
I don't think you can.
That's easy, you can't.
I just can't find a way to say, to vote yes on this. Honestly, and I know the state is making this an as of right thing. I'm just trying to figure out how North Reading can protect ourselves from, one, staying in the small town that we want to stay in, and two, from not losing a ton of money. In our schools,
I
you get,
agree 100%, Nick, and I'll be honest with you. It is every other small community also. This was written in a very poor manner, in my opinion. And February 2nd, 2025, whether you vote yes or you don't, what we're here tonight is to put some boundaries in place. Those boundaries are the only additional protection that the town of North Reading can do for itself.
Right.
But I cannot turn around if the cost of construction.
How about fees? Because all I see is that we can't impose excessive costs. Then they have definitions in here, and I don't find excessive, so it gives us a little leniency. I'm wondering how we can get something that isn't excessive yet not defined.
Okay, so playing devil's advocate on that, you have another ADU that's already in place that their parents are living in, right? That's the existing ADU. Do I impose that fee on the parents that are already existing in that ADU?
I don't think you
You
would, because
have
they
to
wouldn't
be
pull a building
fair
permit.
across the
They
board.
wouldn't pull,
If
they wouldn't
it's
pull a building
new, I
permit.
can't
Why would
do
you
it.
go in there? They're not pulling a building permit for you to be able to go in there.
But I already know where they are.
What?
I
She knows
already know
where
where
the
the
ADUs
ADUs
Oh,
are.
I'm sure we all do.
Exactly. So it would be
But it doesn't
very
give the town, it doesn't give the
unfair.
town the obligation to raise a flag, per se, unless a building permit is in, right? That's the first step to be able to see what's going on with that building permit. Are you building an ADU, are you building a bedroom, are you building a shed, are you building?
Right. I just looked at a
Driveway.
permit today that was clearly a in-law, clearly. Will I verify that? Of course. There's no harm in building those, but I personally cannot add a fee to it just because it's an ADU. I have to do it full and fair cash value. If it costs $10,000 to build, then that is what I have to put on there for an assessed valuation. I
Debbie,
can't add to fees.
Can I ask you a question on that one? Because that's been one of the problems with the building department is the stated value of what's being constructed, which I think the building department has corrected that in the last year. But builders are putting down for homes, 3,500 square foot homes that cost, sell for $1.2 million, and they're putting down $350,000 in the cost to build a house. It doesn't cost $200 a square foot to build one of those houses. It costs $375 to
Or
$425.
$466.
Right, and so when you just mentioned that point, there's no ADU that's gonna cost $10,000, and I know you only use that as an example,
Yeah,
but
just
that's where the town can do a much better job, is right at the beginning, is to call, whatever you wanna say, but I'll just BS on a number that's being used. Most of the towns use affidavits, they have either a third-party group that goes out and prices it. I mean, that's where we have to get more strict, where the town is losing money on the value of permits right now, or again, I think the building department has corrected it, but if you look at last year, or the year before, the value on all, and this is, it's not on the building department, it's an honor system, but if you look at what the builders, our builders in town are putting down for the value of what it costs to build these, it is literally 1/3 the cost of what those are to build.
You're saying from a permit standpoint, because
From
then,
a-
because
from
when
a
they
permit,
sell,
but that's
the
Right.
end user owner is paying full rate.
Well, again,
But they are.
the owner is buying it for that value, but that's not, remember, that's market value, that's
Yes.
not the appraised. What the town is looking at is appraised values, and I'm not sure what Debbie goes off of. Does she go off of, as she mentioned, the building permit? When a builder says, so you don't. Okay, so you go off
So
of that.
my values do
Determine my
not,
tax bill.
my values are not a representation of the
What's stated
building
on the-
permit.
Good, okay.
Absolutely.
That's good to see.
My assessed
then it was just a
values
building
are
permit
based off
valuation.
of replacement cost, what it would cost to build that building today. That's what my assessed valuations are based off of.
Thank you, Mrs. Carmona.
That's great, thanks, Debbie.
That's all set?
That's what.
No.
Wouldn't have the cover.
And again, I apologize, folks.
One more and then we can circle back then. I would Mr. Gonzalez next.
Um,
I was waiting for somebody to ask that question.
I'm
Mrs. Gonzalez?
Just, I would like to see if, now, one of you could just kind of dummy this down for all of us, what we're doing here. Because Mr. Massey's, you're saying that you're having a hard time voting for this. So I'm understanding this differently. So if we could just clarify for everybody what it is we're doing here. My understanding is this law is going to happen. It's not our choice. This isn't MBTA. We're not voting for the law. The law is going to happen. This is an amendment you're putting forward to try to control it a little bit. Is that the right understanding of this?
Yes, that's true, and we received as much direction and as much input as we could from the state in the process of putting this together. So keep in mind that as we go forward, we could always, if we find out that there is some room to move, we could always revisit it at another town meeting. Right now, what we're doing is trying to bring forth something that meets the requirements the state has given us under the ADU bylaw, and at the same time, put as many controls that they would not object to into it, so that we have as much control as possible on it. That's basically what we're doing here.
Okay, thank you.
I'll just add too, so no matter what happens at town meeting, it could be voted down, this particular bylaw. On February 2nd, the building department is required to allow permits for ADUs. So it's not a question of whether or not we're going to allow them.
Right.
They will be allowed.
You have to.
The reason the CPC has introduced a bylaw is to have some restrictions versus no
Yeah,
restrictions.
some controls.
That's it, just setbacks and
This is
some
for
very
our
minor
benefit.
things, that's it. Yeah, it's not an opt-in, it's just happening, whether or not we vote for it.
Whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
Mr. Griffin?
Yeah, and I think that, and they're right with what they're saying, and we did not vote unanimously, our board, on this, because we kind of, I was very outspoken, I don't really like the law. I think the law is really loose, and it allows, like, the wild, wild west. So even though the law is going into effect, just because I don't like the law, with this particular issue, this is something to vote for, I believe, because it does give us some control. Do I like the law? No, I think it's terrible.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
Mr. Massey said, he's over here scrambling,
Right.
because he's seeing the future of, well, what if, there's an influx, and what if we get 30 to 40 in the first year? And then 40 students or 30 students come into the, he's looking at that, and he's very concerned about that. So I think that's what, am I right, Mr. Massey? Yeah, okay. So he's just looking to recoup money for the town, because it is basically, in a town standpoint, as far as the monetary value, it really is a loss if students come in. And that's where I think the danger, and that's why I brought up with the new developments and adding and all that stuff, because I also feel kind of the same way. I don't like the law. I really don't. I just think it puts a terrible burden on small cities and towns to add more population when they're not really, some of them are not interested in that kind of growth at the time because of budgetary constraints and things like that. So, I'm sorry.
Hold on, no, we can go back to this
No,
one.
I was going to let you finish. What would you say, Mr. Griffin, is the best boundary that we put into this bylaw to protect North Reading?
I'd say dimension.
And I don't mean to put you
So
on the spot.
dimensionally, I think that, dimensionally, we just kind of stuck to where we should be, where if this is what we have, so I think that alone could defer some of this.
A lot,
Yeah, because a lot of, you guys know, the lots in the town are all this way, that way.
Yeah.
It's not gonna work for a lot of people. There's gonna be a lot of applications, I think. And it really, and I'll tell you what, and I said this in one of our meetings before, the building department, I would hope that maybe there was another resource for our building department to kind of keep a hold on this specifically, so it doesn't turn into, oh, here comes a trailer, boom. Because there are companies in Colorado, they're all over out west, they will come in and they'll flatbed it right onto your lot, and there you go. So it can happen very quickly. So our building department, and this was just a suggestion at one of our last meetings, I said, if we have any resources, if there's any more money somewhere, I don't know, I know money's a hard thing to find, but if there is, some of that money should be into maybe an assistant just to deal with this issue so it doesn't become an issue or a
Police
problem.
it,
I'm sorry?
to police it.
No, not to police it per se.
hard to police.
Yeah, you can't, but just to make sure that the guidelines are being, everything's falling into place. And okay, well, this one, yeah, we got 40 applications, 18 of them went through because they met, here's the list of criteria, everything was checked. Our bylaw was also, implemented and looked at, and our dimensional stuff was all met, because there will be properties that they will meet this, and they will do this, and they will put, garage, or however they're gonna, however it's gonna play out structurally and all that stuff. But the building department, I just felt right from the very beginning, the building department should be bolstered in some way, part-time, something, to help Jerry out, because if this thing kind of goes crazy, we don't know where it's gonna go, and people just think they can do anything, it could, could get ugly. But I believe that he, in the building department, one of our defenses into make sure that this is done properly is to bolster that department and make sure that that department has what they need to do their job in a really, favorable manner for the town, because we gotta be careful with growth.
Yeah.
We really do.
I have one more question. With this law coming in, making these legal, we know that there are already existing ones in town that we know they're there, right? Can that now be brought in to, because you're taxing them separately, right?
So the ones that exist for the most part are attached to and/or part of the primary home.
Okay, so
So
that,
they
so you can
are
only tax
taxed.
separately if it's not.
Well, I can't tax separately anyway, so an ADU,
I thought you said 10,000 square foot.
so the ADUs, the way this is written, can be a detached structure. If and when we receive a building permit for an ADU to be built detached, at that point, that will have a separate value,
Okay.
but it will all be part of this same property record card with one value.
So
Because
their
it's
tax,
not a
so
separate
the,
lot.
so the tax that they have will go up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep, yep.
Be similar to
But-
if you have a shed on your property and you get a
Right.
tax bill and it shows the shed for $200 or whatever.
Yeah, yeah,
But-
okay.
But the fear of falling behind monetarily as a town, it totally exists
Right,
because of this law, absolutely.
absolutely.
Mr. Wall and Mr. O'Leary, anything before we get to the next part of the article?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, to me, this is a situation where we should be supporting it because, again, it allows it to be more conducive to what our current neighborhoods are, what the current restrictions are, what the current setbacks are, as opposed to what the state allows, which is 10 feet from the property line. This is now 25 to 40, whatever it's going to be.
Yep.
It just makes a lot more sense, and it will pass muster with the Attorney General's office as far as compliance with the new law. This makes sense to support, regardless of what you think about the law.
Right.
This makes sense to support because it, again, assists in ensuring that any new structures that are going to be built under this law have additional setbacks, which is important to the neighbors, the neighborhoods, and property values. And again, it's going to have an adverse impact on the ability of some people to be able to do it. It's going to limit it. You know, as far as the septic system goes, that's a separate issue as far as the number of bedroom count, and they have to come into compliance with that anyway before they get an occupancy permit. So that takes care of it itself. So to me, this is something that needs to be supported. Questions that I've been asked on these, again, I know before Thanksgiving, I think the building department had over 50 inquiries about this, and the timeline when it goes into effect was February. So we know that there's going to be, there already is interest. I don't know, I haven't talked to Jerry since then, but my guess is there's been some other inquiries since February, first week of February is coming up. But
44, yeah, you said that.
some people have inquired as to whether or not, can they put a garage on the accessory dwelling unit? You know, if they have the room on the lot to meet the setbacks that are going to be required now, can they also build a garage?
As long as they stay within the size constraints.
It-
I don't think there's any prohibition.
Inside the what?
The size constraints, I don't think there's any prohibition on there being.
Well, I mean, the
a garage.
900 square foot is living space,
Right.
right? So if they-
Oh, I see.
if they want to put a garage on the 900 square foot accessory dwelling unit,
Oh,
can that be done?
That'd be an accessory
I-
use, so it would have
If
to
they
be.
meet the accessory,
It would be-
It just says gross.
It would have to be the accessory
but I know,
use.
that's the accessory
I don't
dwelling
think
unit,
that-
or if they just do another,
No, put a
again,
garage
if they
on the
separate
ADU.
it and do another detached
The
building,
ADU is part
I
of the
suppose they
existing
could.
house.
I mean,
They
I
still
think
have
that's
to
because
separate.
it's
It's a subjective question.
I can find out.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I've had a couple people actually ask the question, I
You're
go,
very crafty.
I don't know, it wasn't me.
You're very
Somebody- I have to give credit to somebody else
all
who asked
kinds
me.
of ideas.
We
that's
kicked this
right.
around, Steve, and I'm telling you,
Select board is telling you.
Yeah, but that's the thing, you know, can you put an attached garage on the 900 square feet? Or does it have to be another detached building to meet the setbacks? To do- I mean, so people have 3 sheds on their property and a garage, you know, you can do those sorts of things, so you can have
All
a
those
detached
people that
building, but from an
don't know
aesthetic
that.
standpoint, you know, it's just something that we should be looking at to modify down the road to allow that sort of thing, so that you don't have all these pop-ups, you know, in people's yards. But I said, I don't know, I'll ask, but, so I can't take credit.
I'll find out.
Yeah,
That's a good one.
but anyway, as far as the issue itself, this is, to me, a no-brainer, something that we should be in support of.
But on that, no, I just want to touch on what you just said.
Yeah,
Is it possible for us to add to this amendment that you can't put a garage on an accessory dwelling.
Or that you can, because we may want to allow that so that, again, there aren't pop-ups all over the property. If someone has a big enough lot where they can put one accessory dwelling unit, 900 square foot, and then they say, okay, they want to move a relative in there, or an older couple, something like that, and they want a garage, you're going to have another separate building with more setbacks from the primary unit, from the accessory dwelling unit, and the property. So now all of a sudden, you're going to have an ADU, you're going to have a garage, you're going to have already garage there, you're going to have 2 sheds,
So, if I may, I think that the
I got a
answer
swing
to,
set.
No,
I think the answer to the question is that if you put an ADU on and you meet all the setbacks, everything we have here, and then you want to add a garage on, the garage becomes an accessory unit. And it would
not
have
a dwelling unit, just an accessory building.
Yes, but you,
Right.
but,
Accessory
so you
structure.
couldn't, so I think your point was that if you add the garage in, could you put an ADU over the top of it? No, you only allowed one per piece of per site, one per house, so
But
it
who's gonna
wouldn't gain
police
them
it?
anything.
Yeah, I know, but I think we need some clarification,
That's the
because,
problem.
again, we've got some structures in town now
Yeah.
that are garage with an in-law apartment over it,
Yeah.
which, may not be, well, it's not legal, but they're there,
Yeah.
But if someone were looking to build a similar structure with 900 square foot of living space and a garage under, or a garage attached, does the garage space count towards 900 square feet of living space?
If the garage, if it's in fact just a garage where they drive in and drive out, nothing else, as long as they're not trying to put an ADU on the top of it,
Right.
because it's all gonna have to be, it's only gonna have to be
Yeah.
accessory setbacks. If there's already an ADU on the property, that's it, no more.
So,
No, I understand it, but I'm just saying, I'm building a new ADU, I'm building a new structure, 900 square foot, accessory dwelling unit,
Yeah.
but I want a garage for the people that are gonna be living there.
I don't see how there would be any problem with that, as long as it could meet the setbacks.
Right, no, I mean, if they can meet the setbacks, but
The setbacks.
does it have to be a
of the ADU.
detached structure? That's the question I have. And again, in some instances,
I don't think it
an
has to.
attached structure would aesthetically look better for the neighborhood.
Yeah.
In other situations, it may not, but,
Some of those will be self-solving just by the fact that there's only a certain amount of room on the property.
no, I know.
I just say you
That's-
can't put a garage.
Mr. Griffin? Well, I was just gonna say, that is, I'm glad you're bringing this up, because this is the can of worms, and this is all the
Yeah.
stuff.
Right,
And
okay.
it drives you crazy.
Yeah.
It drives you nuts, because their guidelines are just guidelines, and there's nothing etched in stone with some of this stuff.
But we're gonna have
And-
people who are gonna be pulling permits, that's gonna raise these questions that need to be answered. And again, if we can assist the building department ahead of time, great.
Right.
And
So-
these are questions
so
that are already
my-
being asked.
My thought
Doesn't
is,
that just allow them to?
my thought on this, real quick, would be, if, what is the purpose of the ADU, right?
Mhm.
So it talks about half a mile from a transit. So the whole purpose of it is to not have a garage.
Correct.
But you're affecting 351
No, no.
cities and towns here,
No, no,
which is
no.
what's been implemented.
Well, that's what
And
they
you're
do, they
Western
just make a
Massachusetts.
blanket law that you have to
100
swallow, and
100
nobody
miles
likes
from
it,
a
and that's what we
train
get stuck with.
Yeah.
And then we have to figure it out.
Okay,
I know that, but
you need to get over the anger and say, what you're doing, what we
No,
need to
no.
do to comply.
I think we
and
all
restrict as
agree we
much as
don't
can.
like it. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm pointing at the obvious. I-
So have we got the finance committee's position on what they think this is gonna do to the town? If we, if we gotta go
It's
through
not a
with this?
question of what it's going to do to the town. We know that it's going to increase the number of housing dwellings units in the community.
It's not.
And with that,
equivalent.
generally
We
would
have to.
come,
Okay,
would come
It's not.
the need for more services.
We don't have a choice.
Police,
Okay.
fire, and schools. So that's going to happen anyway.
Okay.
That's going to happen. So
are you not concerned with the expenses of the town?
No, we're only voting on, we're only
That's- to me,
voting on
that's not the
an
point. That's not the
amendment
point of
to
this
the
right
law
now.
that's
So
happening.
this argument.
this has been implemented. This is in effect.
Can't say no to the
I get it.
law.
I get
So
it.
Yeah.
all we can do is try and manage it as best we can. And part of the way
This
to
is
manage
limiting.
it is to allow,
We have
which
enough
what it
time
allows us to do
about
is
what
to
we
change the
start arguing
setbacks.
about what you agree on.
No, but what it does is it allows us to change the setbacks, which will minimize the impact. If we just go carte blanche and not amend
Mr.
these.
Griffin speaking, then I gotta get to Mr. Wallner. He just been sitting
Good
there
thing
quiet.
to a crappy thing.
What did you say?
No.
That's your.
I would just like to suggest we don't allow a garage on the accessory dwelling unit.
Because if you
Get
do
out of
build
here.
a garage, what you can easily do is poke a hole
Easily.
and rough out the entire
Easily.
garage.
Easily.
Take the garage doors
Exactly.
off and say, thank you, this is now my garage,
Yeah.
but
now
that's
whatever.
1,500 square
It
feet.
is so
Mom
much
and
easier
Pop,
than
you're
you can
now
believe.
Mercedes.
People are
and
doing that now.
Lexus.
That's what's occurred already. That has already occurred.
But
In
to
two
allow
mis-
it, I understand.
In
yeah,
two,
I
Mrs.
agree.
Gonzalez, I think actually earlier you brought up about existing ADUs and how would you want to
Yeah.
be able to capture it. There is, someone correct me if I'm wrong, there is zero incentive for anyone that has an existing ADU to pull a permit and say, tax me as a new ADU.
Right.
There is no one that is
Nobody.
going, has an existing ADU attached to their house that's going to come into this town hall and ask for a building permit to
again,
consider
Mr.
an
Chairman,
ADU.
just as far as the assessed valuation, to Debbie's point earlier, and maybe to even build on that, the accessory dwelling unit, there's no land cost associated with that. That goes with the primary residence right now. It's already, the land is already being taxed on the primary. So all you're talking about is how much is the structure worth that you're
Yeah.
putting on there. So maybe it's worth $300,000. That's all you can assess it for. You know, it's not like you're gonna assess it for, you know, $860,000, which is the average family home in North Reading. The most you're gonna be able to get on an accessory dwelling unit at 900 square feet, I don't care what they put in it, you know, is probably $350,000 additional assessed valuation for taxation purposes. But that's what we're gonna have to live with anyway, not to mention the number of kids that are coming.
And then you can ask more, but then after Mr. Wall.
Right. There's questions probably to Mr. Gilberto.
You haven't talked in a while.
Can this amendment have more amendment? Do we have time to amend this amendment before a town meeting? Or is this the way it goes in?
So this is how it would be printed in the warrant, and this is how it's submitted by the planning commission at this point. That doesn't preclude an amendment from being offered on the floor of town meeting with
Okay.
regard to any of the issues that we've talked about.
Except that we wouldn't-
We need to-
except that we wouldn't have an opportunity, if one's offered on the town meeting floor, for town council to review it and give us an opinion on it, which we have done with this.
And then we run the risk of having it shut down. If it's
That's
shut
right.
down,
Right.
the retroactivity of this goes
But
away.
maybe it's that between now and then,
Yeah.
when you may meet Mr. Gonzalez, we've done, like, if we're gonna do an amendment and we're gonna present it at town meeting floor, maybe like, come up with it maybe a day before.
And it
And
will
not
be-
that, like, afternoon.
Well, I think, Mr. Gilberto, you're saying that that can't be done.
No.
No, just-
In terms of what's printed and mailed to the residents, that's what I'm speaking to, but that doesn't preclude us from, during the course of the planning commission's hearings, having a discussion about modifying what was printed in the warrant.
Okay,
And
that's what I wanted to know.
could be proposed by the planning commission, could be
I'm
proposed
just
by the
thinking,
select
because
board.
these ideas that are coming up, and maybe you want to make some changes or additions to it, that can be done.
Mr. Gilberto?
It could be. To be clear, they're going to have a hearing on January 21st, I think.
On
Would that
this
be
one,
discussed?
January 7th,
Okay,
tomorrow, is our public
Oh,
hearing.
tomorrow.
What I can certainly discuss with town council, whether it's an option for us to prepare, an amendment to that. We can
Okay.
discuss it at the public
Okay.
hearing. I think it's well within,
Okay.
what we can amend.
Ms. McKnight, would you mind looking into the construction trailer modular unit portion and how we can
What regulations possible?
Yeah,
make North Reading continue to look what North Reading looks like?
Sure.
yeah. That's a great-
Okay, Mr. O'Leary, because you had your hand up, and then I really gotta.
I just, in relation to any amendments that are offered at the town meeting, on town meeting floor, or even between now and then, if the planning commission is gonna be offering an amendment, it's gotta be, they have to have a public hearing on the whole thing. There isn't time for that. The one thing that is working in our favor is that we can put these guidelines in place now come February. We have a June town meeting, we have an October town meeting, so that as we get clarification on the guidelines and answers to our questions, we can do additional modifications to the bylaws in
Yes, we
June.
could revisit it. We
You know,
can.
so that
Okay.
moving forward, maybe a few will slip through the cracks, but
Okay,
Like the 60 that.
But
are in-
excuse me, you don't want to jeopardize this passage and the implementation of it because of an amendment that's offered at town meeting.
No, I
floor and
understand.
negates the
my
whole thing.
concern was, this law's gonna be this law, we have no control over it. I didn't know if we only had this shot to make an
Oh,
amendment.
no.
Oh,
We can still revisit this.
Sure.
Yes.
I did just want to clarify a couple things. I mean, certainly the bylaw can change and be amended over the course of, the public hearing process between
Yeah.
now and town meeting and the printing of the warrant. That's fine, and I'm happy to check on a number of these things with town council and have some things prepared. There's also a severability clause in the bylaw, which just means that if there's any part of it that's not valid, the Attorney General's office is going to strike that part. They're not going to strike the whole bylaw. So if it turns out that we have something in here that we weren't supposed to have, we would expect that that part would be stricken, but that the rest of it would remain.
And when do we find out
it's what they're striking?
Within 90 days of town meeting. After town meeting, after a vote, if it passes. If it doesn't pass, then it doesn't get reviewed.
So we could be voting on something. Well, we could be voting on something that the people vote yes, because it sounds great, but then the Attorney General's going, actually, no, you can't do that.
But basically, Mr. Massey, if I could, without this, they do whatever, we just have to do whatever they say anyway.
Yeah.
So this is the only thing that lets us do something different for our benefit.
I understand.
So even if they cross something off, I get what you're saying. That's where we're at right now with
I
where we
understand. So
live.
we all here want restrictions. If we're like, oh wow, these restrictions are good. Okay, yeah, I can vote yes to this. And the AG comes back and they're like, actually, yeah, you're not allowed to do this.
But we'll get some of them. We'll get something rather than nothing.
But supposedly these
You'll
have
get
been,
this. You'll get
time out, but
this.
supposedly, and then I swear I'm going to you, Mr. Wallner. Supposedly these have been screened by
Town council.
through the state's guidelines, so
Justin.
these should
They
be
should
fine.
be
Some of these
good.
new ideas we've talked about,
Maybe
they
not.
have not been screened. Mr. Wallner, please.
Okay, it's such fanfare. The question I would ask is that I'm thinking about what Mr. Massey was talking about with the trailers coming in, and maybe we should be thinking of just a suggestion. Can we improve or tighten our building code for primary buildings,
No,
which would affect accessory dwelling units?
we don't.
And I'm
affect
thinking
building
of, hold on before you
code. We
say
don't
no.
affect building code.
That-
We don't. We can't
I'm
change
asking,
building
let me
code.
ask,
We can't change building code.
The state code really rules this, and even before this
Well,
ADU.
Can I just give an
Well-
example? So there was I heard there's this new rule about like insulation in the walls, like you have to have the walls separate, you have to have the 2x6s
Mhm.
staggering, so that way they don't touch each other. That would be a new building code that would prevent a trailer from being able to be brought in because they don't build trailers
I
that way,
have no
Right.
idea what you're talking
right?
about.
So I believe that's state code. I also believe that impervious surfaces, there's a ratio between the amount of impervious surfaces you have on your lot versus that isn't. If we start adding floored space, that'd be another way potentially you could restrict it, especially some of the smaller properties. I'm just wondering if there's anything we can do to update our building codes that we could be allowed to do something like that would tighten it down even just a little bit to restrict just frivolous buildings being brought up.
Mr. Pierce, anything on that?
Yes, it's a state building code.
Hold
Do
on.
not change the
Hold
state
on.
building code. I don't know what else to say. I'm sure Mr. Pierce will agree.
Yeah, you're not gonna change the state building.
Just like we can't change this law.
Yeah,
There you go.
yeah, because what I started to say was that the building inspector was having issues before this came along. We had started talking about this a couple of years ago. He was already having trouble with the fact that some of the things he wanted to restrict were allowed by the state building code, which made it very difficult for him to control it. So we've done the best we can with at this particular time for controls. We'll see how they work out. We also get the opportunity, as time goes on, is to look at what other towns have done and see what they put together that worked, and then we can come back to the well if we need to make a modification.
Mr. Wallner?
Okay, no, thank you.
So I'll just add.
Trying to be creative.
Move on, if that means there's always going to be more questions, but I think the one thing I want to recall is that when we had Senator Tarr and Representative Jones here during the MBTA discussions, they did say that on this topic, there was some appetite for some sort of amendment at the state level because it was so vague. Unlike the other one where they couldn't get, anyone, but on this, it seemed like there was enough. Because again, there's a lot of North Readings out there, right, smaller, where it was like, there was enough of maybe we'll move. So I do like that we've gotten some confirmation that as those things happen, we can incorporate it,
Right.
right? Unless, like, here's a question, no one has to answer it. If something gets struck down at the state level, even if it's not in the bylaw, automatically, we don't. Like, for example, if it starts saying that you can, you gotta have 2 cars, but you only say 1, do we have to actually change the 2-car, or is it just become that? That's a bad example. You know what I'm trying to
It
say?
just reverts to whatever the statute says.
Okay.
So that gets what Danielle said. Any portion that they don't like gets stricken. Anything that complies.
No, I mean, if the changes are in our favor, can we automatically just start practicing them, or do we have to change the bylaw?
We would need to change the bylaw. There are some things that might become unenforceable if it's not in our favor. And in that case, I think it's always smart to have a bylaw that matches what people are actually allowed to do because it's more transparent and it helps everyone. But as far as if something is changed and, the state regulations had said that towns have to require something and then turns out later, no, towns don't really have to require that, we would go back and amend our zoning bylaw.
Okay,
would
so
do
we just,
that, yeah.
then we just have to take that action. Okay.
That's right.
I
All right.
have one more question,
Yep.
Mr. Chair. Is everybody else freezing?
Yes.
Thank you.
Interesting.
Okay.
Okay.
And I have,
Not me, I live
10 more
outside.
questions, Mrs. Stewart. I'm just kidding, just one more.
Okay, Mrs. Minnie,
I was about to say that. I'm happy
There
to
is, I would be surprised if I came
it
up
must
with
be
10.
that seat.
There is a state hearing or a state virtual call where cities and towns can call in and ask questions. Is anyone from the CPC or Ms. McKnight attending that and plan to ask questions?
I've registered for one. There are going to be a couple of them.
Okay.
I have gone to one already, and yes, there will be more.
It would be nice because I'm not sure if we're, unique with all these things we're bringing up or not, but it would be interesting just to hear their initial reaction or even a facial expression to say, oh, maybe it is a little loose there. But anyways, just interested. It'd be great if you guys can attend.
So, Mr. Gilbert, you want to bring Article 2? That one's kind of seems more straightforward, but,
Sure. I believe as part of
I did my caveat.
as part of the discussion, the planning commission identified a recommendation for a zoning bylaw amendment that would prohibit short-term rental. So I'll turn it over to the town planner, if that's okay?
Sure. So currently, we don't define or regulate short-term rental units in our zoning bylaw. To date, it's been assumed to be prohibited by the building inspector because it's not specifically allowed in the zoning bylaw. So currently, when it comes to the building inspector's attention that there is short-term rental being, operated, he takes action against it. This proposed bylaw would just codify that. We would adopt a definition for short-term rental units and provide an actual timeline for what short-term means, and that would be 31 days or less. So this is something that, while the zoning doesn't specifically say it, in effect, this is how the building department has been operating, that they are just not allowed. So in the course of discussion of accessory dwelling units, I think the CPC and the building inspector are concerned that accessory dwelling units would be used as short-term rentals. There is a provision in the ADU bylaw that says that they can't be used as short-term rentals, but in addition, this article just prohibits them.
Can you make it longer than 31 days?
We can make it, I think we would have the ability to do it as many days as we thought was appropriate. The 31 days came from a state definition of occupancy, but I think that we would be allowed to choose the number that we want.
Could you do 6 months and lease required?
I think that we would be able to do any length of time.
I only say that because not because of ADU, but for example, in New Hampshire, if you rent something out less than 6 months, there is a tax, an extra tax imposed on the renter and the rentee. So I'm just saying, if we could put 6 months, because I think that you could get around 31. Maybe, fine, I can't Airbnb for 31 days, I'll Airbnb for 33. 6 months though, that's a little longer commitment to make in North Reading with 4 restaurants.
We could make it 6 months, but if we're thinking about taxing it, then we're allowing it. This prohibits
It's gonna
it.
be
so-
bored after 30 days.
Not taxing it. I'm thinking more, I'm not trying, I'm just saying that New Hampshire does it from a tax perspective. I'm doing it more that, to various points, including Mr. Mass, including Mr. O'Leary, I think that I see it in Malden, where across the street from where my parents live, the guy moved out, and now, it looks like a car dealership. Every 2 weeks, a new car, because they're Airbnb-ing it. And I get it, it's fine. That's what they do there. But that could happen here where, if you can restrict it to 6 months, I think it's going to be much more difficult to find someone on the fly. Like,
Even
maybe
3
more
months.
stability.
Even 3 months.
That's what I'm saying. I don't know what anyone else's opinion on 31 being a little not enough. I think it's, unless we can't do it, I think 31 days, I mean, you can rent out a month at a time. And then that, I think, becomes
Right.
exactly what we don't want.
Month to month, we could
Anybody else think?
So, yeah, one of the issues with this, with the Airbnb stuff, this is so hard to govern. How do you govern this? So, I mean, unless you're sitting there watching your neighbor and, you know, in the
Our
traffic.
retired father's got nothing else to do.
Well, no, okay.
Went to
But
grocery
so
store
that,
now.
that's where you might, it could work the other way too. Like, I think 31 days is like one of those, for a timeline, I think it kind of probably works, so you don't have the every 2 weeks or 3 nights, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you got all that stuff bouncing in and out. The 31 days or less, like, so what happens, I guess, the building department, people will see that activity and they will call that in. And especially in a community like this, if you saw that right across the street from your house and you saw that type of activity and cars were parked all night long and then the next, 3 days at a time, 5 or different vehicles all the time, you're like, what's going on over there? So then they're abusing this in and out mentality. So, I mean, I don't know, I don't really, I'm not a big fan of this stuff either, but.
And again, I know one of my
Because the
colleagues, on the
Airbnb
rental thing, I think that this is this is what's gonna come back to bite. Unfortunately, I feel like some residents, because in Massachusetts, the renter rules. And once someone gets in,
Oh, yeah.
this could become a problem. And I just fear
Oh, yeah.
that if we can make this restricted to the point of where, and transparent, maybe it stops some people of making a short-term decision that I'm gonna rent it for 2 months, that then becomes 2 years of unpaid rent. And then when you come to town hall and complain, we're gonna say, you're running a business now, like, what do you want us to do? We can't supersede the tenant's bill of rights or whatever we have now. I'm a landlord too, so I get it, but, so again, that's why with this one here, I don't know if it's more to just protect people from North Reading. There's no easy answer.
I know we bang this around a little bit too, in our meetings, and yeah, I mean, the Airbnb stuff can be so abused. I have a friend who has a 3-family house, and the whole house is Airbnb.
Mr. Earl,
Yeah, I think the primary concern and target, not so much protecting people from their own decisions of what they've done here, as far as, picking a bad tenant. It's more the Airbnb industry that's out there now that's pretty prevalent, trying to restrict that from occurring. So I think this is a first good step of getting it. And again, if something else occurs, we can address it again. We have 2 or 3 intervals during the year we can do it to make it more restrictive. But I think one of the other things we need to be concerned about is that the current rental properties that we have in North Reading now, and the owners of those property in relation to tenant at wills as opposed to long-term leases. You're forcing the owners of the property to enter into longer-term leases than they may want to, and then further restrictions from getting rid of a bad tenant or having a family member move in. So, again, this impacts all properties in North Reading, not just the ADUs. The ADU bylaw, as proposed, touches on short-term rentals. This defines short-term rentals for all properties. So,
And also, another thing though, back to your point, Mr. Massett, like, here's the thing, I don't know when the verification happens, how often, I think it's once a year, but what stops somebody from, I move in, only me and the landlord knows I'm gonna be here 2 months, welcome to the hood school, or Little, or Batch, or Pickett, and now I'm gone, and yes, I don't know, I think there may be an annual. Like, do you know how that works? I forget, because I feel like the only time I've ever shown when I put my kids to school, the first time they're in, to send in like the verification that you live here, but then after that, I haven't seen an annual verification of, do you still live in 122 Elm?
So there would need to be a registration process for a student to enroll, and they would need to show proof of residency. It's not just, hey, I live in that house. There is paperwork required to justify that, utility bill, a tax bill, a lease.
So, yeah, but there will be no utility bill or different tax bill for the ADU. So,
Not necessarily, yeah.
No.
so, do you know what I mean? Because it's all gonna come through as the primary homeowner.
No, I think they could probably have separate meetings and stuff.
No, absolutely not.
No? Okay.
So that does create a problem. Yeah.
And then the thing is this, if it's someone who lives in town, fine, you know, they came here, they live here, you know, just like there's people that rent, that's great. But it's easy to game the system, and we have a pretty good school system, so living here for a couple months, getting your kid in, and then, you know, there's people that will sacrifice and drive 20 minutes from a neighborhood community that's much cheaper to send their kids here. I'm just, again, it's something where, this is where I think, I'm looking at, unfortunately, every law in the United States of America is written that if you have the resources, you can get around it. Fact. And I'm trying to see how people are going to, and this is an easy way to do it, a very easy way. You know, so this is, I have more concern with this type of thing. That's why I'm saying, if you gotta commit to 6 months, granted, you can still get around it, right? But at least at that point, maybe it's not like I'm gonna go live with Aunt Susie for a couple months and then just move back, you know, to Malden. Let's just keep picking on Malden. So.
It's not that I don't think we're allowed to do a longer time frame, like 6 months. It's just that if we do that, we are saying that no month-to-month leasing is allowed in North Reading, which is bigger, you know, that's a bigger regulation, I guess.
Does it say in the, I haven't.
No, but to Mr. Studo's point, is there any confirmation that maybe Mr. Gilberto or Ms. McKnight could get from the school system that says we require every student to confirm their residence every year? Because if they don't confirm their residence every year, which I have experience from friends, that I think you're right.
Well, this has been an ongoing situation.
I think that, yes, they register year one, and then
I did it for kindergarten, then we did it for first grade, but then after that, I mean, again, I haven't gotten, you know, I get more that I gotta confirm the dog license than I do with the kids.
Yeah.
That's right.
Mrs. Herbert has
So I'll question you.
According to Massachusetts, a short-term rental is defined as 31 days or less. So if you wanted to make something like this 6 months, you gotta get rid of short-term.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's good. Since
Thank
we
you.
can't.
I guess that's the answer.
Well, again, that's, yeah, so, again, it's something where, that was just my concern with it.
We may want to go back to the schools to ask them
On Wednesday,
to tighten their.
Oh, yeah, we'll be with them Wednesday.
on Wednesday,
Yeah.
you can ask them. How convenient, right? It's nice. Anyone else?
You're gonna ask people if everybody, do you own your property or are you a renter? Good luck trying to get that information. And again, there's been instances over the years where, you know, kids come to school here, give their grandparents, you know,
Yeah.
address, and conversely, kids from our school system, you know,
Yep.
are in other communities that I know of,
It
you know,
happens.
and they use the in-laws' address, or,
Mhm.
you know, it's gonna happen, but again, those are one-offs, they're not, it's not a habitual,
Yeah.
I went to school in
they're
Berwick.
one-offs.
Just remember that.
I agree,
Also,
but I also disagree, because now we're talking about the entire town and a lot more availability.
No, that's why I think,
So,
that-
you
I just
know,
think the
so-
short-term thing, and the short-term thing
Yeah.
is, the definition is what it is, short-term under the state law is 31 days or more. Put it in, if you're gonna be doing something more restrictive, then
You're
it's
gonna have to
another,
change it.
then you're also codifying that that type of practice is what you're allowing,
Right.
and people start
And
to
then
use that too. You know,
Weeds is what
you're
it is.
planting the seeds.
I mean, I'm happy that today we gave everybody every idea of how to get around this.
Mhm.
Good.
And we weren't the first ones to think about it either, so.
Correct.
NORCAM can accidentally delete the video for this particular episode.
Move on. Let's go, Burrow.
The third article relates to floodplain, floodplain district zoning bylaw. As I mentioned at the beginning, there was an abbreviated version, sort of a placeholder, while we were awaiting comment from the State Department of Conservation and Recreation, which was reviewing the language. They responded back on Friday afternoon. Planning Commission was gracious enough to review that feedback at a meeting earlier this evening, and so now the version before you includes the detailed proposed floodplain district zoning bylaw amendment. I'll turn it over to the town planner for further detail about that.
Okay, so this proposed bylaw is an amendment to our current floodplain district overlay zone. It adopts the current requirements of FEMA in order to allow the town and residents to remain participants in the National Flood Insurance Program and to allow residents to continue to be able to access flood insurance. It makes federally required amendments to our permitting process, including a few new changes which are required now of all communities. One major change is it designates a position in town as a floodplain manager. In our case, the position would be the conservation agent. It requires an administrative permit for any activity in the floodplain, including earth removal and storage of temporary vehicles. And it retains our current requirements for special permits for construction within the 100-year floodplain. And the CPC continues to be the special permit granting authority for that. It adopts the new flood insurance rate maps. You'll see in the bylaw the blank spaces are for the actual dates of the maps. They're anticipated to be released in January. We won't have those dates much before town meeting, so they will need to be amended on town meeting floor most likely. The final text of the proposed bylaw was approved, as the town administrator said, by DCR as of Friday. The process includes DCR advising us. They act as an intermediary between FEMA and the communities. They advise us what needs to change in our bylaw. We work together on that process. They give a final approval before the draft can go to town meeting. And then after the town meeting vote, FEMA, if it's approved, FEMA will do their own review, and then it will become final, and we will remain eligible for the flood insurance program.
Could you, Madam Chair, Mr. Chairman, excuse me, through you to the town planner, could you just describe what's going on with the maps?
Yes. The maps are, this is kind of a two-part process. One part of this is to amend the provisions that we have in our bylaws for permitting processes. The other part is that we are also required to adopt FEMA's new maps. And FEMA releases their flood maps, their flood insurance rate maps, about once every 10 to 15 years. The last one, I think, was 2014. Those maps have been released in a preliminary form, but they have not yet been released in their final form. Once they're released in their final form, they'll be given a date, and that date will be sometime in January, we're expecting. And we only have 6 months to adopt those from the date of their official release by FEMA, and if we don't do that, then we risk residents losing flood insurance. So because our town meeting is in June, we wanted to take this opportunity to put this in place with plenty of time for all of the review to happen. We can wait until June, that's a possibility, but it's only leaving a week or two for FEMA to do their review after the town meeting vote. So that's why we're trying to do this, very quickly, even before we know the final date of the released map panels. The panels have some changes from the last version that can be found on our website. FEMA has posted a before and after interactive map showing some areas in town that have been removed from the flood district and some areas in town that have been added, mostly around water bodies that have been added. There are a number of places that have also been removed. As has always been the case, individual residents who are in a flood zone district by the FEMA maps but who really don't believe that their property floods are free to hire an engineer who can file a letter of map amendment for them. And when that happens, if a property is found to be at an elevation that does not warrant it being included in the floodplain, then FEMA will issue an exception letter for them, and they are no longer considered in the floodplain, and they're taken out of the next version of FEMA maps that are released. And they don't have to buy flood insurance.
So
So currently, do we have
Yeah,
bylaw?
if I
Oh,
may.
yes.
All we're doing is just plugging in
This is
the map
about-
date?
This is an update of the existing.
Okay, so it's not
I
like.
wanted to make that
I
clear.
thought we had something, but,
Yeah,
so
We-
all this
we
is doing
do.
is referencing the new map date?
yes.
Well, so there is additional text, and the reason we were hoping to do, insert this text and delete that text as an update to the bylaw. But the changes were pretty long, and FEMA has actually introduced a number of new, definitions that are required to be in there. They've introduced this requirement that there be a position named in the town. They've introduced a number of new elements. And so with all of those changes, it just was too complex to just remove and replace. The bylaw itself is about 9 pages, which is considerably longer than our current bylaw. It achieves a lot of the same things, but it just means all the federal regulations that have been introduced. But yes, we do have something in place. It is a requirement in our current bylaw that construction in the flood zone receive a special permit by the Community Planning Commission. This revised version also creates a new administrative permit that's required for anyone in the flood zone, even earth removal, which would not currently come to the CPC. It just would never come to our attention. So this is another new process that has been worked into, that's required to be worked into floodplain management.
So again, this is more restrictive as to work that could take place within the flood zone.
It is a little bit more restrictive than we have before, yes.
And have we had issues as far as earth removal and all the rest that we're aware of? Or are we just looking to give ourselves some teeth to enforce something when something's brought to our attention?
I'm not aware of any issues with earth removal, but it is a federal requirement now. If we want to remain in the flood insurance program, we have to have that language in there. They will not allow us to, not review those projects. It can be earth removal, it can be storing a trailer, it can be many number of things that would not normally come to the Planning Commission. And that's why we're not making all of that work a special permit process. We're not required to do that, but we are required to have a permit issued for any work.
So the burden's on the property owner to know that they're in the flood zone. If they're looking to do something, they have to come and apply for a permit. So may require a special permit, may not.
Yeah, exactly.
And can we easily identify, because I recall 10+ years ago, when the last map was adopted, we had a number of residents complaining that they were out, now they're in. No one complained about getting out of it. They always complained about being put in.
I didn't complain because I got out.
Yeah, nobody complained about getting out of
Right.
but a number of people were included, previously were not, and then all of a sudden they had to get flood insurance, which is expensive. Do we know, under the proposed map,
Yeah,
how many are impacted?
there's a map that is on the Planning Commission's website in our explanation of the zoning bylaw. We don't have the ability to influence FEMA's decision-making on that. This process started quite a few years ago. and-
No, so, let me just jump ahead then.
Oh.
I think what we talked about 10+ years ago
Mhm.
was when this happens, if the town is able to identify that those residents should be notified that they're now going to be included, or that they've changed. They're either no longer included, so you don't have to get your flood insurance anymore, or you are now included, you have to get it, or you should get it, and you have a right of appeal. And here's the process.
That seems to be
Are we-
something our GIS manager would be able to do and identify those properties.
Because I think it's important, because particularly people who've been thrown into the new flood zones, it could be costly for them, and they maybe, I don't know how they get notified.
I mean, many of the time people don't. They wait until their mortgage holder will tell them.
Yeah, in your escrow, whoever's holding your escrow will tell you. That's how you get noticed. Yeah. Bank of America came to me and said,
How do they know? Who notifies them?
they're looking for
They're
that.
monitoring it?
Well,
They do. They
they-
monitor.
They
this.
do, yeah.
They own your
Because of the
property.
claims, yeah.
They
because-
own your property basically until you
Oh,
pay
yeah,
it
yeah,
off, right? So-
they own the liability
Yeah,
associated with it.
right.
But anyway, if it's something that can be done and should be done, just to let the residents know that they've changed.
I'm
The
sure
waters
that's
have
something we
moved, whether it be from building, from other construction sites that have taken place, and all of a sudden things have shifted. But
I'm sure once we release those.
and I just recall, 10 years ago, it was a big to-do in a couple of areas of town,
Yeah.
and that we tried to make a commitment that if because at that point in time, I think we had the GIS system in place, and we're going, we didn't know. You know, we can't tell you. We didn't know who was going to be impacted. We just got the map too, and we'd have to look overlay as to what was there, what isn't there now,
right.
you know, and do that. But it's a lot easier now what we can do.
You know what maybe we could do? Maybe we could put a copy of the, on the website of the old and the new maps. So like
But people aren't, I mean, how many people go to our website? and
Well,
look
not
at it?
too
Yeah,
many.
that's
You're right.
not
That's a
really
bad
notified.
idea.
No, I think it's a good idea. I think it's a good idea, but it's a question
But
of,
at
you
least
know,
you could direct them to the website. I think it's a good idea.
So the thing is, yeah, there'd be just a resource online
I think
where
it's a
they
good
can go
idea.
to. And maybe some type of, notification in the paper saying, hey, listen,
if we can notify.
check your address,
We
FEMA's
can
got a new
notify them,
map,
they
and
can
just
Yeah.
let
get
the
the
people
process
know.
started sooner rather than.
That way they were not doing the work.
A lot of the increases that we have are around existing bodies
Mr.
of water.
Scarlato's putting it on
Not-
social media right now, no?
It's changed.
He's gonna cover that for us.
Anyway, all right, so we do have one in place. This is just a modification to incorporate the requirement, the
updating.
newer, the more stringent requirements by the federal government, and referencing the new maps.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's update to the existing flow.
And this also does allow people to insure their property correctly when they need to.
Right. Yep.
So,
Cool.
All right, moving on.
Thank you. Article 4, which is, so I think we're through with the planning commission. Town planner, I think you're staying for 9 Mill Street.
Just a quick question. Mr. Chairman, has the planning commission taken a position to recommend these articles?
Yes.
yeah.
Not all, recommend all of them.
It wasn't majority, but yes.
No.
Thank you for doing that. And we know we've gotten feedback that folks like seeing that in the warrant, so we appreciate that.
You good?
You go home?
Yeah, thank you.
Congratulations. Okay, you can go sit down.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin. Thank you, Mr. Pierce. Thank you, Ms. Bateman.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'm sorry for the
Thank you,
100
guys.
questions.
No, better to ask them now.
Yeah.
What's, do you need any support here or something?
Just Mill Street, getting working on.
Yeah, okay.
It's okay, well,
Kevin, can you turn the light on, please?
I'll spend a few minutes here.
Are we good?
Because I know actually about the Mill Street project.
Well, that's a little bright.
That's fine. You gotta stay away.
Thank you, Jim.
I like his last call.
Mr. Chairman, through you, I'll ask if the assessing manager be willing to come up just to the table to answer any questions I may not be able to answer. But Article 4 on the warrant would seek authorization from town meeting for the select board to enter into a payment in lieu of taxes agreement for renewable energy storage facilities. It says generation or storage. I think this is only a storage facility. Is that right?
It's a
Battery.
battery storage
Yeah.
facility, yes.
So it's battery storage, and for some in the community who may know, we have a similar facility that's located at the Department of Public Works in the back, adjacent to the connection with RMLD. The company at the time was Nextera, I believe.
Nextera out of Florida.
And we sought and obtained from town meeting permission to enter into a payment in lieu of taxes agreement, and ultimately did enter into a payment in lieu of taxes agreement. And without getting too far into the detail, because there are a number of terms for this that would need to be negotiated between the town and the current
Kearsarge.
developer, Kearsarge, thank you. I was going to say North Conway, but it's Kearsarge. So the this would give the board the ability to enter into the payment in lieu of tax agreement. The benefit primarily is that the assessor is required to value the equipment that's part of this installation on an annual basis, and the depreciation rate is very rapid. So the value comes down very quickly. We saw this with the property behind the DPW as well. The ability to get into a payment in lieu of tax agreement allows us to stabilize that as a tax revenue stream over a long period of time, which is what we did with Nextera at the 166 Chestnut Street location. So this has been a project that's been in the works over the course of the fall. It was in front of the Planning Commission for permitting into the middle part of the fall, and Kearsarge has approached us regarding a payment in lieu of tax agreement. We opted not to just leave this until the June annual town meeting because That would likely preclude the town from recouping any tax revenue in this current fiscal year. So by adding this to the special town meeting warrant, we're making available the potential to take tax revenue off of that. I wasn't planning to get too far into the business terms of it because ultimately it's something that we would negotiate and bring to the board for your ultimate approval. But the concept is to be able to stabilize that tax revenue over a long period of time, which obviously is in the interest of the town's budget. Questions? Okay. Thank you.
I'm bringing revenue, not spending.
That's why there's no questions.
That's fine.
This is all good. This is all good.
I know.
So Debbie, this is all good, right?
It's all good.
Yeah.
20 years.
The development,
Payments annually.
We've done it before.
that's awesome.
Exactly.
And the development has been permitted by the planning commission. It's underway, I believe, and they are partnered with Reading Municipal Light, but this is privately owned equipment that will be taxable. Debbie, thank you.
You're welcome. I do just want to add one thing, if I could. This Kearsarge is looking for a 20-year period, which is very typical, 20, 25 years. Most recently, due to the depreciation, like town administrator said, they have been backing off the 5 years and going strictly to the 20. We just did a few solar in Middleton too. So that being said, what happens is looking at that 20 years, I am trying to negotiate with them instead of paying a 4 quarterly payment to receive an annual payment, which would be in the month of January. We send the bills out, the in lieu of payments all go out in December. This way here, we know what we have for the revenue for the budget season. So that's really our last thing that we're looking to negotiate on. And Kearsarge did tell me last week that they don't see a problem with that. Just maybe during the year of construction, he may have to do 2 payments. I think that's doable. Just pick.
This is on the same site? What site are we talking about?
So this one is at 500 River Park.
Okay, good.
So it's directly behind. I did drive down there before the holidays. And so far, they have it delineated with a chain link fence.
Is that Concord Street?
Mm-hmm. Off of Concord Street, yep.
Right at the women's.
So it's way down the back, right
Way
near
down
the
the back.
wetlands, actually. Like, you can't see it even from the roadway driving into River Park. You physically have to drive all the way in.
I just have a quick question in relation to the term here, 20 years. I mean, you're talking about a depreciable asset which rapidly depreciates. How often is it replaced? In other words, 5 years, whatever they're using, their battery storage, all the rest, obviously replacing with new equipment, more expensive stuff. We're not necessarily, if you're going on a 20-year agreement, capturing the value.
So they're looking
I mean, they're depreciating it over a 3-year period probably, or less.
It depreciates over that 20-year period. At the end of that 20-year period, they expect the life expectancy to be 0. That's the same as NextEra too. NextEra is the same way. They will be at 0 at
So
their
it's the same
20-year
battery, same
period.
equipment that they have there for 20 years?
That's what they're saying. And then the
I'm with you.
battery
Mr. O'Leary.
storage.
I'm a little bit
Is
suspicious.
removed.
just
Pick it
because
up where you
I do
would
enough
now.
taxes that
So
things
the
come and go off the books rather quickly.
The battery storage material, if you will, the cabinets and the batteries themselves will be removed. Because that was another thing I had to go over, who was going to be responsible to remove. And it will be Kearsarge. So at the end of 20 years, that battery storage facility will not exist as it's written right now. Will they replace it? Maybe. I don't know.
Good point to Mr. O'Leary's point with just general maintenance and replacing parts and pieces. And keeping it going.
upgrades,
I know.
change in technology.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, the change in the technology associated with batteries is significant these days. So I guess that's the only, and again, that's still to be negotiated, but to me, the 20-year term, and I understand it's a straight line, a steady stream of income for us, but it's a steady expense for them,
It is.
which doesn't change regardless of the value of the asset that's there.
Right.
And we don't know, I don't know how we would verify the changeover of the assets and the change in technology and the upgrading of the technology, which would have a significantly more value.
So I don't know how often that they would have to replace and or repair. I do know what
It doesn't
their
happen overnight.
total investment, oh, right.
It doesn't happen
right.
overnight. In other words,
Right.
they don't say, okay, 20 years and then see you in 20 years, we're gonna take them out. No.
Right.
There's a gradual influx and changeover.
Any solar, even the panels.
Right. And again, with that changeover, with that upgrading of the technology changes, the value of those assets is significantly more than what you negotiated 2, 5, 15, or 20 years ago. So there's a significant advantage to the asset holder for a long-term agreement such as this. And while there's a steady stream of income, the value of that we collect today on a steady stream of income over 20 years with no compounding of value or interest, all of a sudden it diminishes. The value of that diminishes to us, and it's significant to them. This is just a quick cursory thought.
I wouldn't say quick.
It's
It's a cursory thought. I'm not quick about anything usually when I speak, so I'm okay to go on. But, so, this is allowing us to enter into an agreement. Is it up to 20 years?
No, for 20 years.
For 20 years.
20 or
20
more.
or more.
No, 20 years.
It doesn't preclude, do we
20 or
need
more.
something
20
that
or
allows us,
more.
that precludes us for
Says or more.
negotiating for something less?
It says or more
20 or more.
Where,
This
On
limits
the-
us to
on the
start at
warrant.
20.
Can we change it to 10?
oh, I didn't see that. That wasn't sent to me.
But I mean,
Then
the
we can
intention,
give them a
is to enter into a 20-year agreement. I get that. My concern is that
Or more is what you're talking about.
we're locking ourselves into a minimum of a 20-year agreement or more, as opposed to 5 years or more, which can allow us to go 20 years, 50 years, 15 years,
So the more wouldn't hurt, I just didn't know.
No,
that
no,
was
I'm
on-
not worried about
was
the
on
more,
there.
I'm worried about the bottom line here, which is, this is restricting us to a 20-year agreement at a minimum, as opposed to a maximum or more. What do we have in place now that allows us to enter into an agreement? Or do we have a bylaw that
There's no bylaw,
addresses
it's
it?
covered by state law, it says chapter 59, section 5, clause 45, excuse me. The standard for these is 20 years. I'm not sure how it benefits us to enter into an agreement that's less,
Yeah.
like less years.
Well,
I guess
again,
it
my
could, but-
concern isn't so much, my concern is the value of what they're paying a tax in lieu of, the value of the asset and the use of the property, is significantly more valuable to them in year 10, 15. And the return on our entering into this agreement diminishes significantly over time as the value of the steady dollar stream stays the same. We're not getting an upfront payment, and and it's not going down with the depreciation. But if you look at it, maybe we're better off entering into an agreement to follow the depreciation, take the front end cost, and then as they replace it, we do it again. But
Now, I'm just thinking specifically to
okay,
our batteries.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm supporting you, I'm sorry, Mr.
No,
Larry.
that's okay.
I'm sorry to interrupt both of you. Sorry, now I forgot where I was going. Go ahead, he'll come back. We'll go around the room.
It says specific to a battery.
If we keep the
Oh,
20 years,
specifically to a
you
battery.
could still be on the board when this comes up for renewal.
No.
Specific to
I'm
batteries.
not gonna bet on that one, I bet he is.
Specifically to battery storage, I'm sorry, I came around the room, came back. Specifically to battery storage, that is the type of equipment that if you're setting up shop at a location with a battery storage, you don't really have an interest of pulling that out and relocating it. You have an interest of just keeping it there. To Mr. O'Leary's point
If it's
is,
serving, I mean, you know, one of the things that we really have to consider is the fact that this technology is changing ever so fast. I mean, I just look at 10 years ago and going to school and learn about this crazy stuff. And the technology is just lightning speed.
could we give the town the ability, even if we didn't change the terms, could we give the town the ability to maybe include some terms that could say every 10 years we reevaluate you, or reevaluate the equipment, or some sort of, trying to grab something?
So they base it off of what the life expectancy of what is being built there today. That is 20 years. So to Mr. O'Leary's point, if and when, depending on how technology is advancing over that 20-year, leading up to that 20-year period, after 20 years, sure, maybe we definitely would be revisiting this. But to go back and say, you know, revisit it at 10 years, nothing's gonna change in 10 years.
Nothing's gonna change in 10 years. I don't know.
Yeah,
Like what's changed is
But
it's the
you-
size of
but-
batteries that are in an automobile right now and what those batteries are operating. And again, everything's getting and more powerful.
Correct.
Well,
Uh,
can't we?
But the depreciation may go from 5% to 8%.
Let me separate the question so we can just answer what we want to do here. Number one, even if we wanted to, will they take less than 20? That's the first question, because
I think when we talk to them, I think that the 20-year, I think it is, as Mr. Gilberto said, it's a standard because of the initial investment to put the system together.
Yeah.
And the rapid decline in the value is due to the fact that the batteries age. So one of the things that we asked is what happens to the old batteries, and apparently at about half-life they can take them out and send them to another use, so they don't they're not making a battery dump out back there. So they were pretty clear about that, but that's the real thing, the upfront cost and then the maintenance of it was why they wanted the 20 years.
Because again, we can all agree, disagree with the number, right? But if all we got is 20, if they won't take less, then it really doesn't matter what we approve, they won't take it as well,
Yeah.
correct? So is the deal contingent upon this passing, I'm assuming?
Well, the deal, it actually has to go in front of town meeting.
Right.
We're
That's what I
looking
mean.
for select board approval tonight to
Get it on the warrant.
get it on the warrant, to go in front of town meeting.
So what I would say is that if it's gotta be 20 as a standard, I mean,
It is
so
a
if we bring
very
it there, then on
standard
town
year.
floor, I mean, we
Right.
can decide whether we do it or we're not comfortable with 20 years and then we find another suitor, which I don't know if it even exists, I don't know. I'm just trying to say that we're going in a circle and it just seems that.
Well, we already have the one behind DPW.
And that is for 20
We already
years.
have that, right? We
The
already
pipe.
know that that's working.
Right.
So I don't see what the problem
Right.
is. We're not
And-
having an issue with that, right?
No, we have
With what,
zero,
running municipal light
zero
run?
problems.
Yeah.
With RMLD, I mean, again, they're our provider, and that was an opportunity for us to partner with them to provide backup service for our community and other communities. So there's a little more involved than a payment in lieu of taxes here, from running municipal light or whoever the vendor was at the time. That was more to the district's benefit, in order to provide this type of service. I guess my question is, if I might, Mr. Chairman,
We'll
is
see how this is a benefit.
if we don't approve this bylaw, can they put it in there anyway, we just won't get a payment in lieu of taxes?
So the option would be if we do not accept it as an in lieu of taxes, then I value it and put it on the personal property. but that is not going to be a steady stream of revenue. It also, depending on the depreciation, our in lieu of may be more of a revenue benefit than the personal property tax. That's your, in my opinion, the in lieu of tax is the way to
the dollar
go.
amount associated with renting municipal lights, payment in lieu of taxes, is small. How much?
$13,500 a year.
$13,500.
Can I just add something? So I did a comparison between the Next Era and the Kearsarge. So RMLD is actually part of and working with Kearsarge down here at 500 River Park. They are part of this whole process. And one of the questions I asked, I had a meeting with RMLD and I had a meeting with Kearsarge. RMLD, their purpose for being involved down there is also to benefit the taxpayers. So
it's
that
also to
is,
come into compliance with the federal regulations that as providers, energy providers, they have a requirement by 2040 to do certain alternative energy sources which they're never going to meet, but they have requirements to do it. Yeah.
so that was, I mean, it is for the ratepayers too. Kearsarge.
Okay, I didn't know they
Yep.
were associated with it, or they were looking to partner with it. But basically, on the, as an example, $13,500 times 20 years is $270,000 straight line depreciation from zero, from total dollars, $270,000
Straight. Yep.
in today's dollars, what they invested supposedly, assessed valuation of the personal property, depreciated over 20 years, straight line. It's $13,500. Whereas if you don't take a straight line, it's $270, and then it goes down to $240, and then it goes down to this, and then all of a sudden.
And depending on what the equipment, you're, on the personal property, I don't just value from the depreciation, it's the asset cost, less the depreciation. So that asset cost, what may be $278,000 today, next year may only be $158,000. Then I'm also applying
Well, depending
the
on how quickly,
5%
depending on how quickly they're
depreciation.
depreciating it. In other words, they're not depreciating it over. They're depreciating over 20 years for a payment in lieu of taxes. They're depreciating it much more quickly on their tax returns, probably 7 years at the max, and it's gone off their books, and they're replacing it with new equipment. You know, their cost value is zero on their tax return as far as any tax benefits. They still have the asset, or they've replaced the asset, and you're going to see that on their tax return as to what they put on another set of batteries here for another $275,000. 5 years from now, it's going to be $487,000, and you're missing out on that. You're missing out on it. But, you know, I realize it's a steady stream of income. It's something you can count on. It's just, it would be more work for us in order to chase them down for the personal property taxes and get the tax returns to say, what have you put on for assets, what are you depreciating in this particular location? But my guess is...
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I'm not town council, but I did look back to the 2018 language. And one thing I think we can try to do on the fly here to make it clear is to say that it would be for a term as determined by the select board, including a term of more than 20 years. That way we can have, it's clear it can be more than 20 years, which I think is what's triggering the town meeting approval, but leave open that it could be less.
Again, I don't
leave
know.
that to be negotiated.
Yeah, I don't know what the general law calls for.
The law's not clear about the town meeting authorization part, and I did look at that just now.
But is it the term?
It says 20 years for the term in the law, so that's driving this in some fashion. But when we sought the authority in 20, I think it was 18, we didn't seek it specifically for 20 years. We just sought for a term as may be determined by the select board.
How would you propose we rewrite it?
I'd have to wordsmith it a little bit, but it would say something like for for a term as determined by the select board, including a potential term of more than 20 years.
Well, can we
Potential.
do this? Can you
For
reword it,
20
and for this one, we can change to recommend a town meeting?
Sure,
Rather
it's still
than-
gonna be, the warrant needs to be signed tonight.
Yeah.
But he's gonna have to wordsmith it anyway.
Yes, but I mean, but at least we can think about it more, and then we can vote on it with the new, again, I don't know how much there is to think about, but, you know, just so we can actually see the new term before, you know.
I mean, I don't know that we'll have concluded the negotiation either, so that's another component of it. So I think we all embrace the concept, right?
Yeah, what's the timeline associated with this project?
So they're
Right.
looking at starting construction. So with that being said, my thought is, in the reason I was in contact with the town administrator to get it on January was
So
if
you're
they
pushing.
start construction, just knowing how fast Nextera got completed, my hope is that we are going to collect some of that revenue. We're a Chapter 653 community. I can pick up revenue up to June 30th. So right there puts us in fiscal year 25. And from what he told me, his hope, Kearsarge, hope is to be completed the beginning of March. So if we can get that, or even half of that revenue in here, the first year is $32,000. If we
But
can,
that was my next question. What are you talking about payment in lieu of taxes? And what are we talking, best guesstimate without final
Yeah.
negotiations?
So it's levelized with a 1.5 escalation. So in other words, their total payment over a 20-year period is going to be $739,000, $957.35. So if his completion date is March 1st, we're Chapter 653, I can probably negotiate, if not half, maybe more. I don't know, I can't plan on what he will say or anything, but that is his completion date, so that's what I was banking on. That is why I was pushing to get it in January, on January's special town meeting.
So it's $37,000 a year, 20 years straight line. And you're,
With a 1.5 escalator.
Annually.
Per year.
Per year.
I'll recommend that.
So,
I'm prepared.
what's the board's pleasure here, to use a line item?
Do you want to hear potential changes to the wording on the term or no?
Let's hear it.
So what I came up with is picking up where it says, with the owners of renewable energy generation and/or renewable energy storage facilities located within the borders of the town for durations of time as determined by the select board to be in the best interest of the town, including terms of 20 or more years. And it just continues with what's there.
So it leaves it open.
Again, it's not been reviewed by town council. We do need to sign the warrant tonight. I don't see it as harming the intent here. It gives you the flexibility if you choose to go to less than 20 years. Again, not clear that the law allows us to, but in the event that it does, and you want to, go.
It's there, yeah.
Mr. Gilberto, do you mind repeating that
Sure, I'll
last
read
part
it.
that says within the boundaries of the town for?
Yep, for durations of time as determined by the select board to be in the best interest of the town. That language came from the 2018 approval we
Right,
saw.
right.
Comma, including terms of 20 or more years, comma, and then continue with what's in place right now.
I'm fine with that.
I am too.
As in vague? Oh, they love that stuff.
No, and again, I don't know that anything's gonna change between now and the negotiations in
fight
March
with vague.
1st. But,
Yeah.
okay.
It leaves a window.
Well, my hope is to wrap everything up with him tomorrow. I will be speaking with Andrew from Kearsarge tomorrow. He's looking for a permit. He wants to be completed by March 1st. So right, he knows that town meeting is the end of January, but that doesn't mean that and he's willing to go through the expense of all the permitting and do what he's got to do in order to get this ready. So that's my take on it.
You can express my concerns in relation to the value of the assets over a 20-year period, even with a 1.5% escalation on the payment. I'm just not even sure what the upfront dollar amount, $740,000, is actually accurate.
So,
and again, what's going to be replaced in the meantime? What other assets are going to be put on their books that we're not going to see it even asked for over the next 20 years? Okay. But again, that $37,000 in today's dollars, 10 and 15 years from now, is significantly less valuable.
Mr. Roberto.
Even at 1.5%.
Thank you, Ms. Scarbone.
Okay.
thank you.
Thank
Mike,
you.
can you send that?
Yes.
We can look at this.
So should we vote on this?
We have motions after the next day. You have, just want to touch on the next day?
There are three others that we customarily will have on the warrant for a town meeting, depending upon where we're at in the fiscal year. In this case, we're smack dab in the middle of the fiscal year with the next town meeting not scheduled until June. One is for prior year bills, and that is Article 5. We have, I believe, one known prior year bill. I'm looking at the finance director. I don't know. I believe it's the Department of Public Works bill.
And it was a small amount for an oversight. They paid the wrong amount, and then the company contacted them after July 1st saying, in essence, you missed the payment or you're short of the payment. So in order to correct it, we have to go to town meeting.
And I believe they contacted us like within the past few weeks. It was after October town meeting where this came up. So we have a vendor who's awaiting payment. We cannot make the payment until authorized to do so. The Article 6 would be leaving open the option to amend the fiscal year 2025 operating budget, and Article 7 would do the same for the capital budget. We are not anticipating proposing any amendments to either budget at this point in time, but the finance director and I, have these articles there to provide you the opportunity in the event something comes up between now and the date of town meeting to address it. Versus if we don't have these articles on there, we would not be able to address them at town meeting. But again, nothing intended to be addressed at this point in time. There are a number of areas of concern that we are looking at in the budget, continue to monitor, but none of them appear to require action outside of the annual town meeting in June.
Is there, I didn't go that closely, when you have do you have an explanation under each article? No, right? As far as...
So not in the printer, the posting warrant, which the constable needs to post at Ryers and a bunch of other places, but in the mailed version of the warrant, there will be a description. What we will add is where we know something, like that prior year bill, we'll add that amount into the description, because I know people are curious for more information. We have descriptions for the 4 other articles, including the one Ms. Carboni went over, and the 3 that the Planning Commission submitted. So they will be in there.
But for the last 2 articles, I think it's important to point out that at the time of printing and mailing, if there's no anticipated action required, however, if something does, put it in there.
Sure.
Don't get alarmed that we're looking to amend the operating budget. There's nothing right now. There's areas of concern that we're monitoring, but at the time of mailing.
Just curious, because probably just because I'm newer, but, do we anticipate anything popping up? And if not, why even put these articles on the warrant?
We don't anticipate anything, to be candid. I mean, we talked to reasons today. There's nothing that we see. What these articles would safeguard against is the issue that we cannot foresee that comes up between now and the 27th that we could not address without these articles being on. So,
What would be an example of that?
We had wildfires. That were, that generated costs.
Snowstorms to the brush fires.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Especially like DPW did a lot with the brush fires. They also do the storm coverage and that type of thing. So if you add that on top of.
And many of those things can be addressed through request to the Finance Committee for a reserve fund transfer, but that's capped at the amount of money that is available in the reserve fund, which we did increase to 175.
Yeah, we had
More than-
60 some odd thousand,
Yeah.
110.
So that would be an option. If we were to have a funding shortfall, again, it's highly unlikely.
Yeah.
But if it did occur in an enterprise fund, we would not have the ability to address that because we cannot expend from the reserve funds. But I understand the question. There have been special town meetings and we have not put these on. We had a special town meeting on the betterment bylaw. We did not have these articles on it. I think we did have them on for the 1 Central Street property last January, if I remember correctly. So it just depends.
Yeah, no worries, thank you, appreciate it.
It's a valid question for sure.
Yeah, I just think of the explanation. Nothing's anticipated, but it's just
I think that's a good one.
a placeholder in case something comes up between printing, mailing, and town meeting.
Mr. Massey. Motion.
Please and thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I move to call a special town meeting for Monday, January 27th, 2025, at 7 o'clock p.m. at North Reading Middle High School. I'll put gymnasium in there. 189 Park Street, and to sign the special town meeting warrant.
Second?
Motion by Mr. Massey, second by Mr. O'Leary. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
I'll just go through.
Yeah.
Now, are these our personal recommendations?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I know last time I think I mixed that up. January 27th, special town meeting warrant articles. Article 1, amend code zoning bylaws accessory dwelling unit. Mr. Chairman, I move to recommend Article 1, amend code zoning bylaws accessory dwelling unit.
Second?
Motion by Mr. Massey, second by Ms. Gonzalez. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Article 2, amend code zoning bylaws short-term rental. Mr. Chairman, I move to recommend Article 2, amend code zoning bylaws short-term rental.
Second? Go ahead.
Motion by Mr. Massey, second by Mr. O'Leary. Any further discussion?
Yes, are we planning to change anything from what you brought up, or?
Yeah. Like everything else we brought up.
Oh, no.
The 31 days.
I think we settled that. The short
That we
term
can
is
do it
defined as
later.
31
Yeah.
days.
Short term is defined by state statute.
Yeah, we couldn't change
So-
that.
She brought up a great point of changing short-term to just rental.
To what?
Mrs. Hurlbert eloquently brought up an idea to get rid of short-term rentals by crossing out short-term and just keeping rentals.
We could certainly address that, I think, at a future town meeting, but this particular warrant article's already been advertised. So I don't think that would be within the four corners of the article. It would actually be a different bylaw change because we'd really be addressing something else. That's my opinion about it. I don't know if the CPC would be able to do that.
So June's right around the corner.
My other concern is that these are in the form that they were submitted by the Planning Commission, and, you know, when we alter them, we don't generally do that unless the select board is the sponsor.
This is their proposal. So we're reacting to their proposal.
And now we only have
So if we want to
two
make an
members of the
amendment on
commission
town
rather
meeting
than
floor,
four.
Can't change it.
Yeah, not in this, unless we can get somebody on the phone.
Stellar.
Just a question, if you were to change it to 6 months, how would that impact apartment buildings that may lease apartments for some period less than a year? Could they lease them for 6 months?
That's an excellent question. Mr. Griffin's going to take back to the CPC and answer it for us.
Nice.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
I'm going to say no. Because I liked your idea so much. Article 3, amend code, zoning bylaws, floodplain district. Mr. Chairman, I move to recommend Article 3, amend code, zoning bylaws, floodplain district.
second?
Motion by Mr. Massey, second by Mr. O'Leary. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Article 4, payment in lieu of taxes agreements for renewable energy generation storage facilities. Mr. Chairman, I move to recommend Article 4, payment in lieu of taxes agreements for renewable energy generation storage facilities.
1 second, Mr. Massey. Does he have to say as amended, because we changed?
No, it's going to be in the version you signed, so I don't think you need to.
Second?
Motion by Mr. Massey, second by Mr. Gonzalez. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Article 5, prior year bills. Mr. Chairman, I move to recommend Article 5, prior year bills.
Thank you. Second.
Motion by Mr. Massey, second by Mr. O'Leary. Any further discussion?
You want to keep looking?
Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Article 6, Mr. Chairman, I move to recommend a town meeting, Article 6, amend fiscal year 2025 operating budget.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Massey, second by Mr. O'Leary. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye. Article 7, Mr. Chairman, I move to recommend a town meeting, Article 7, amend fiscal year 2025 capital budget.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Massey, second by Mr. O'Leary. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Bears? You can keep sitting there if you want. but-
Do you want to, get Doug down?
Oh, yeah, it's time, yeah, thank you.
So then,
Thank you.
was there a vote to call the meeting? I mean, I know I've been in and out.
Yeah, we did it, yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to print this. Sorry. Thank you. So, do you want me to add that in? That's Article 1. Underline. Except for the ordinance, like that. All the way down here.
Anyone? Go ahead.
Is there another one? How many copies?
So that's not the right version.
That's
It's
not the
going
right
around.
version.
Yeah, no, it doesn't reflect the change that was,
Well, the last page is right.
the last page is correct,
The
yes.
last page is correct.
We can use the last page, right?
Let's see. Actually, it also probably shouldn't be a stapled version, so we used to take that back. No.
I won't read all of Article 3. Unless you want. Should I just read all?
No, it's okay. I've been checking to make sure that none of the sections are cut off or any of that.
Okay.
I added the S to articles. I added the S to articles.
Okay, great. And then the underline.
The underline I added, yeah. That's free now.
I shouldn't talk bad about you so loud.
Mr. Massey. We're gonna do some of the easier stuff like, just do some, can we go down the legal bills? Might as well take care of those. Don't worry, we'll do the housekeeping.
Sir, may I ask you a question?
After I do legal bills.
9:15.
But I'm sorry.
Taking the agenda item.
I am.
Or what it will do in relation here too. Then she just get repeated.
Well, while we're
Right
doing
after
this, we're
the-
just getting other stuff.
Oh, no, no, that's Article 2. Nope.
Mr. Massey, do you have the motion?
Oh, yeah, it's not good. We have room to make that work, yeah. We'll be able to do that.
That's 5.
Oh, legal bills?
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve legal bills for October in the amount of $19,179.21 as follows. General, $18,076.71. Labor, $1,102.50. Total, $19,179.21.
Second?
Motion by Mr. Massey, second by Mr. O'Leary. Any further discussion?
There's a lot of things on these legal bills that I'm sure half of us are not privy to. I mean, you really go through just a lot of information, a lot of things he does that we're not privy to. So how can we be expected to approve something if we don't understand?
Who does?
Town council.
Roberto, do you want to answer?
I didn't hear it.
I think,
Mr. Massey just had a question about some of the background things we get billed for that KP does, and how do we verify?
Yeah, I think it's like, we're getting billed on a lot of things that I look through and probably none of us have any idea what's going on in the background. I think it would be nice to maybe at least understand what's going on if we're going to be asked to approve them. I don't know. That's how I would typically approach something that someone's asking for approval, is to be a little privy of the information before it comes across your desk.
Do you have any specific examples?
Do you want me to go through his bill?
No, but
I'd love
I mean, I'm just looking, I feel like we discuss a lot of this outside of like some of like the lawsuit and things like that, which we can't really discuss.
We can't discuss, but we can get emails and be privy of things that are going on in town.
Mr. Chairman, I only know that when I look at the details, it's broken out by contracts, planning commission, Hillview, those sorts of things, and I look at the detail. I understand there's an ongoing wastewater engineering project with the downtown wastewater project, so I know that's a lot of back and forth there. Community Planning Commission, warrant articles, Hillview, roof, agreement with the, so I look at the details and I happen to be somewhat familiar with 95% of it, I would think. In addition to that, the town administrator is involved with virtually all of it and is well aware as to when the Planning Commission with Hillview, I know he's involved with the Hillview Commission discussions. Planning Commission, I know he's talked with town council. Town council talks with him before town council talks with the Planning Commission. He gets it, they get it okayed through the town administrator's office. So
It seems like a very blanket approval. Frankly, I don't feel comfortable. Yeah, I don't know anything that's going on in this bill. If you guys do, that's good. Maybe I could be clued in, but.
Is Mr. Massey, if you have a specific question when you get the packet to ask Mr. Gilberto?
That's an option.
We're also asked to sign off on overtime, on the, every week we have to sign off on what Lorianne says to us, and, the detail in there is reviewed by them, not by me.
Mr. Gilberto?
a couple of points, I'm just trying to think how to best address, I think, what the concern is. So first, I do review the bill when it comes to my office on a monthly basis. And when there's a matter on there that I'm, not familiar with or a question about, I do reach out to town council to get more information about it. But generally, I'm aware of what's going on here. I think a starting point might be to ask town council to come in and provide an update on pending litigation and matters that you're seeing kind of regularly. That might at least be a start in an executive session. But I'm happy to answer a specific question about any of the items that are on there, either before or after the meeting, as it comes up.
That would probably be a charge, that would probably be billed for that time.
Well, I mean, I'll do my best to
I'm
answer.
sure they would.
I'm good.
I guess I could
Driving here, talking to us and driving home.
Well, I mean, I would recommend, and I don't want to speak for town council, but I think historically they provided that update free of charge when they've come here to provide that
Oh, okay.
update.
Well, that's good.
But what I'm saying is, in terms of providing the answer, I can at least give an initial answer on there. I mean, I will say this particular bill, I talked to Darren, I had like 5 or 6 questions about things that were on it myself, and I generally am tuned in. So I can understand why they might be questions, for sure.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Opposed, say no. Oh, opposed?
No. Mr. Chairman, I move to approve legal bills for November in the amount of $9,196.55 as follows. General, $6,477.05. Labor, $2,719.50 for a total of $9,196.55.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Massey, second by Mr. O'Leary. Any further discussion?
Yeah, here I'm gonna do the same thing and vote no. I for some reason, I gotta figure out a way to understand. You really go through these bills, you understand a lot of what goes on in the background and what is inquired about. And just to be frank, and I hope it's a good point, but I think that if the select board is asked for, just like I would do in my career, how can you ask me to approve something that I truly don't even know what's going on? So to me, I'm going to vote no, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion?
Yeah, just, again, for my own practice, I look at it, if I have questions, I call.
You also might call town council too.
No, I don't call town council, I call the town administrator, because I don't want to run up the bill. And again, it's incumbent upon the administration to be aware as to what we're being billed for. So, again, that's where my confidence level is extremely high, because I know he scrutinizes it. And,
I don't think the bill isn't fair.
no.
I think it's fair. He's very particular with his hours, which is appreciated. But you don't know what's going on.
This is as detailed as it is because of questions that we've had in the past. We've asked town council to break it out this way. In years past, it was more concentrated and we had more questions. So they break it out as to what they billed for under different categories. And that was a result of discussions that previous boards have had, to have more detail, to allay the concerns that you're raising, which are legitimate. And, and then it just allowed for us, as we were reviewing it, if we had a question of what's going on, I didn't hear anything about this, or what's this all about, we'd call the administrator, and he would tell us one-on-one as to if we had a question. That's generally how it's been handled.
Understood. Could be forwarded, could be blind copied on information that's going on. It's good to know what's going on in your town as a select board. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, is the warrant making its way across there? Maybe in front of Mr. Massey now, I'm not sure.
We can go back to Mill Street, Mr. Gilberto, as soon as we're ready.
Did we sign two? Mrs. Knight is still here, thank you for staying. If you could just come forward and give just an overview of what we're looking to do there in the briefest possible terms.
Do you know why we signed two?
Because one stays here, I sign both.
He will make photocopies and then. the town planner noted, as you were signing, that Article 3 did not have the language or what it will do in relation thereto. That's the one that came in late, so I'm substituting the page for that. All right, Mr. Chairman, through you, the next order of business related to 9 Mill Street, which is a single-family, Doug, thank you. It's a single-family home that was acquired by the town for water supply-related purposes, specifically for construction of a pump station. At the time it was acquired, we were expecting to connect to the MWRA through the town of Reading along the Mill Street corridor. We acquired this property for purposes of siting a pump station. It was acquired mostly because it came for sale at the time we were looking for property in the area. That was a big factor in why we acquired the property. Ultimately, we ended up not connecting with the MWRA and going to the town of Andover for all of our water supply. We've gone through and revisited over an extended period of time the best way to potentially maintain property or part of the property for town use for whatever unanticipated use might come up in the future. And in the end, what you see before you would allow the town to still do that in the form of expanding what is already an easement on that property for water supply purposes that we had before we even bought it. It does have a pipe that comes through as part of a looping system near the town line, and it runs generally from northeast to southwest on the property. You should have seen in your packet a map that I think I could probably get up on the screen there that shows how we would expand that for potential utility purposes. We're not subdividing the property, not proposing to subdivide it, but would be retaining that easement ultimately upon conveyance of the property, should we make a determination in the future for utility use.
Page 67 of the packet.
The property's in good condition. We've had it for a number of years, but it's been maintained by the Department of Public Works. I would say that I personally had concerns that at some point it might have fallen into the category of being a so-called tear down. But in a walkthrough in the late summer, early fall, it's in good condition. And I think I expect that there will be interest from people who will be looking to maintain the current house on the parcel. It does have frontage on Mill Street. It's a very limited frontage. It's really not much wider than the driveway. What you would think is the front yard and side yard that abuts is actually land owned by the town of Reading, but it is located in North Reading, so that's not all frontage for this property. I'm going to do my best. I don't know if you want to just kind of describe what the RFP does, Danielle, and then I'll try to put the map up there.
Sure. So we've just been working on a request for proposals to allow the town to dispose of the property in, for the same use that it is currently and for what it's zoned for, just a single-family home. And the RFP would just go out as part of the procurement process where, the town would have the opportunity to select and evaluate proposers. And really the criteria that we put into a draft RFP was the highest price to be paid for the existing, continue the existing use. That really is what the RFP would accomplish, and also it would refer to whatever new easement plan is decided on. If an easement plan is decided on, an expanded easement, it would also refer to that plan in order to, make sure that any purchaser knew what the new terms were of, the town's rights on the property.
I can share that, I believe. I don't know if we could dim the lights possibly, that would be great, Kathy. Thank you. So you see the location of the house on the lower part of the lot in gray there. It's rectangular. It's a split level home with a center entrance and a garage on the side, the garage side and the driveway side. That red cross-hatched area is the current leach field. Everything that you see in green that runs from Mill Street, straight across the street, and then jogs up toward Park Street, that's our existing easement. What you see in blue shaded would be the expansion of that easement in an area generally away from the house, other than a roughly 15-foot area along the, what is a wetland and floodplain line, a wetland line. So trying to maintain our ability to access that large rectangular blue area, which is in a generally dry area of the parcel, from Mill Street, without having to go through wetland or without having to terribly disrupt the property. So this would be an easement. Nothing is proposed to be constructed at this point in time. There's no authorization for anything to be constructed. Simply would retain this ability for a municipal use in the future in that area where you see that large blue rectangle, which is generally pretty far away from the home. There is a single-family home to the north, so that green area passes into a property that has frontage on Park Street. So there is a house up in that area as well. Just to be clear, and kind of to the right of where you're looking there, that's the backside of Park Place, commercial condominiums on Park and Main Street. So, and Jen, I think, tell me if I have this wrong, but the intention is generally to sell to the highest bidder for a single-family residential use?
Yes.
And the use is limited to that?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
How much land is that on? With an acre?
It's more than that.
That was 4.5 acres.
It's, yeah,
4.5 is what I remember.
it has to be at least 3 because it's a limited frontage lot, which means it
Is
has
that what
50
the Y is
feet.
looking for?
Yeah. Mill Street's not so attractive, but,
Okay. Just a thought.
It's practically in Reading.
what's the, sorry, so this is going for bid?
It would go out to an RFP, so we don't have to take the highest bidder, but actually, no, in this RFP, we put in the terms of the RFP that we wanted the highest bidder that would continue the single-family use.
This is a little different than a tax title foreclosure, which we're allowed to go out to bid at auction without town meeting approval. This was acquired in a way that was not for tax title. We do have authorization already from town meeting. It goes back to 2020-ish to be able to dispose of it. So we have that in place already. So we're prepared to move forward with it.
Actually, I think when we took it,
I don't.
the way that we worded this whole thing and this whole project was going on at a time with MWRA, this was a key parcel that was going to be an integral part of tying in for water with Reading. We wanted to provide as much options, depending upon if the negotiations broke down, we wanted to be able to dispose of it too. So we did it all basically in one step. Authorizing town meeting authorizes us to purchase it and to sell it if we found it necessary in the town's best interest. So we don't have to go back to town meeting to get approval for it, which is good.
To the point of the highest bidder, is there anything that protects the town if there's one bidder?
Yes, so the terms of the RFP state that the town has the right to refuse any bids. We are not required to sell it to anyone.
Awesome.
So we didn't set a minimum bid on it, right?
We haven't. That can be put in a draft if we want to, but we haven't yet.
Lorian's gonna, well, maybe.
Just
Go ahead.
so everyone's aware, the ban outstanding, we still owe debt on this is $551,000.
We owe $551,000?
Yes. And the proceeds have to be used to pay the ban off.
Is there anything we can do with this property without selling it? Any ideas?
I mean,
YMCA?
Sure that we could come up with something, but there's years of
Not short-term
Pressure to
rental,
try
no
to-
short-term rental.
Yeah.
No short-term
To
rentals.
put like 5 ADUs in there? Yeah, I mean, I would just suggest starting the price at $551.
We could add that.
We can add
as a
that.
minimum.
Like, just
A reserve.
somehow
Yeah.
that we're not losing money.
Yeah, we could put it as a minimum and see what the market brings it up.
Here's the
Especially if the
acres.
house is still in good condition for 4.5 acres. I actually
Right.
think 551 is a bargain.
It's got a huge barn.
When's that walk through again?
But one of the things that we talked about was, at one point, we were talking about subdividing the property, which is big enough, but we would have to create an access. We'd have to create a road with wetlands crossings, you'd have some swapping that had to be done. And after much deliberation and consideration by the planner, the DPW director, and discussions, this would provide the potential future use, we don't know what it's going to be, by expanding the easement area and recording that in the deed before we sell it. And then it just provides another opportunity for whatever down the road. Mostly the high and dry land, and again, gives us the access through the easement, which is basically the driveway. So we retain a significant portion of the property for future use, undetermined future use, without having to create separate access into this to the property.
Stella, question, have we had the property appraised? I know when we bought it, we paid over $700,000.
We paid 700, yeah. We paid 700,000 for it.
We paid over 700 for it. Hasn't been appraised now, so we know what the current market value is of the property?
It has not been appraised, no.
Huh?
It has not been appraised, no.
Shouldn't we? Before we set a price, $551,000?
I like it, Don. I like it.
Zillow has it higher.
Yeah, let's start it at 700,000.
I don't know what it is, that's why I'm saying, get
Well,
it
we bought it
professionally
for that.
appraised, so we know
How
what we're
long
dealing with.
ago?
Yeah, exactly. It's
I
only
mean-
gone up.
Yeah.
No, but we paid,
I think
we
Mr.
paid a
Keller makes
premium
it
for it
tremendous.
because of its location. You know, not a significant premium, we did pay a premium for the property at the time.
Well, that's even a good point, because then we still lost the money that we already paid. If you put it at 500, you're
Right.
still down 200.
Exactly.
That's a great point.
But
Any other
we're
thoughts?
expanding our future use of the property that we didn't have before, so there's a value there.
I say give it a shot. See if you get a bidder for that amount. The town, we can't make this a losing proposition, in my opinion.
I'm not saying put it out at 700, I'm saying get it appraised, we know what we should be putting it out at.
Unfortunately, it has to go to what,
Didn't you say that we could
town
just
meeting?
reject?
But we can reject.
No,
Any offer?
it doesn't.
Okay.
Does
No.
not have to go to town meeting. This is our determination,
Yeah.
we're ready to put it out.
And we can reject any bid.
We can reject any offer.
We're
Can-
covered.
Can we do an appraisal before you do the RFP?
So we don't have an appropriation to
Do
do
we
the
want an
appraisal
appraisal, or do you
first.
want to,
How much is an
or do you
appraisal?
want
It's
to?
$1,100.
I don't have an appropriation to fund that with. We could ask the finance committee to approve funding for it. And the other thing is, we have traditionally had a hard time getting someone to agree to appraise for this.
You don't have $1,100?
Not authorized for that purpose, at least not that I know of.
Amend fiscal year 2005
Yeah. There you go.
operating budget.
Done. It's worth $200,000. I'm with you.
Right there.
Boom, like it. It's worth
Mr.
$200,000.
Massey, you want an example of what could come up an hour later? Voila.
There
Just
you
like
go.
that, we need $1,100.
Why do we
Whatever, I don't
need
even
that
think
in
it's that,
there?
But I do think it's about,
There you go.
and they charge an out price, but it's about $800-900 right now,
Stuff happens.
again. I don't know.
Yeah.
How ironic.
What do you think, I mean, take a shot. Would that just be under-
That's all fine with me. Again, we don't have somebody that we've contracted with for this yet, so I don't know when the last time we asked for an appraisal was. I just recall it being difficult for us to find.
The
Maybe that
last-
was commercial purposes.
The last appraisals I did were commercial,
Commercial,
but,
okay, so maybe that's
or
what was frustrating,
bigger.
the process. But
Um,
we're happy to do that,
Yeah.
certainly.
Maybe we can just get whatever the price tag is before the 27th.
I think it's wise, so we don't short sell ourselves.
We'll try, but.
Yeah.
I think it's
Well,
money
this
well
This
spent.
doesn't require any town meeting approval.
So I'm trying to think of a funding source to do this that's authorized for that purpose. There was an appropriation in 2018 that was tied to the disposition. Did we close that out? When we closed out appropriations, we couldn't because it hasn't happened yet. There was an appropriation for costs associated with conveying the property. If I'm correct.
What do we have in our professional services fund?
When this town meeting.
It was an article, yeah. It was an article that authorized it. We'll look at funding. If there isn't anything, then we'll bring it back for funding
Okay.
it.
Thank you, Don, for that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
Great
you.
suggestion.
See, it was worth you sitting here all
Move
night.
on.
Now I can go home.
You could have just made the town $200,000 more. It's crazy.
So, anything else on 9 Mill Street? I do believe that Mr. Parisi is still with us. Joe, are you still there? You may not be able to.
Mr.
I see him, I see his name up
Let there
there.
be light. Back up. Now I'm getting a little cold. It's 10 o'clock.
Oh. Good thing it's cold, it's keeping me awake.
You gotta put in you not use you just what's the rules.
Right.
Joe, are you there? Oh, there we go. Joe?
I am here, yes, I'm just trying to get unmuted here.
Welcome, Mr. Parisi. Thank you for staying.
You're welcome. Trying to get my video on as well. Let's see if we can make that happen. The host has to stop my video, I guess. Here we go, that'll be fine.
Hold on here, Joe.
That's all right, can you hear me?
We can hear you, yep.
Okay. So, I cannot see the screen, but I can just start that presentation. I can go from here.
Oh, I know it's
He's still on Mill Street.
That's what it is.
Yeah, he's still on Mill Street.
Host tools. All right, Joe, try to start your video now.
Here we go.
There you go, Joe.
All right, here we are.
I have your presentation, I believe.
Do you have the presentation?
I do have it, yeah.
All received the packet of the RFP for the lease of a portion of the property at 166 Chestnut Street, which is the DPW facility. You're all probably familiar with the cell tower that's there now. So about 25 years ago, town meeting first approved the lease of a portion of 166 Chestnut Street for the construction of the cell tower. And the period of the lease was not to exceed 25 years. So an RFP was put out, and Crown Castle was awarded the lease of the property starting in May of 2000. So there was a structure of initial 5-year term and then 4 additional 5-year terms. I think the purpose for that was to be able to get out of the lease if market conditions changed or whatever, instead of being committed for 25 years. But here we are 25 years later, and each and every 5-year term, they continue with their lease, and you can see the terms there. With the initial 5-year term was $37,000 a year, broken down to just a little over $3,000 a month for the first 5. And now we're at the end of the 25-year period. We're at $90,578 for the year, broken down to $7,548 monthly payments. So each 5-year term was consistent for the 5-year period, and then there'd be a 25% increase for each new term. The total of all of the revenues generated from this lease, you can see at the bottom, was $1.5 million. So not too bad. Move on to the next slide, Mike. So in addition to the Crown Castle lease revenue, we also have within the contract an agreement to receive 51% of any of the fees they get from other subleased on the tower. So currently there's T-Mobile and AT&T. You can see the numbers there for T-Mobile, $42,000 a year, $3,500 a month. AT&T, $31,000, and $2,600 a month. So that total revenue is $73,558 per year. Now there is Dish Network that's just gone off the tower, so we should be getting some additional revenues from that arrangement as well. So next slide. Move to the new lease period since this one has expired. So June 2024 town meeting, Article 29, for a 20-year period this time instead of the 25-year period. Next slide. After RP telecommunications lease tends to sort of mimic, for the most part, the current terms of the agreement. So we have a proposal that we hope to issue in January 2025 to solicit some proposals from telecommunication companies. It'll be for the 20-year lease period. All telecommunication companies are invited, not just the current tenant there on Castle. All of them are invited. They will assume that the ground area will be clear of any structure, which is required in the lease agreement. Crown Castle will do so at the expiration. But certainly we intend to have this lease RFP out there and the lease signed before the expiration, and then determine what we have with the tower. Whether it stays because it's going to be reused by the current tenants that they're the successful proposer, or perhaps there would be some other arrangement if another communications company came in that could certainly purchase that tower as well from them. But that'll all be in the proposals that we receive, will be reviewed by the committee, and some recommendations will be made to the select board. But only one proposal will be selected. And it will be the same requirement or proposing that the same requirement of 51% share of the fees that from the subtenants that they have. Next slide. So the initial 5-year lease term with extensions for 3 periods of 5 years each. That'll be for the maximum 20-year term. We are looking at a minimum annual lease amount of $113,223. What that number represents is basically 25% of where we are today. So in other words, the next 5-year period goes up 25% of where we left off. That would be the minimum. They could certainly, any proposal could go above that and be successful if they're going to bring in more revenue to the town. I think that plays a big part in, the selection of the winning proposal. So the draft RP also states that it'll be increments of 5 years, with a 25% increase in the awards. Again, coalition fees to be paid to the town, 51%, but this would be a little slight change here, directly paid by the main tenant. In other words, we don't want to receive checks from the subtenants. It gets a little bit cumbersome for accounting. Put all the requirements on the tenant to collect the rents and give us our share and report on that. Right now, I'm looking through all the records of all the payments, trying to put them in the right order on the right locations, because we do have communications equipment at our water towers as well. None of the payments seem to be so clear that you can identify what locations are all about. It just makes for a better accounting situation when you have the main tenant responsible for paying the town. We receive one check from the tenant on this tower. Next slide. here's the revenue stream over the 20-year period. You can see the increments after every 5 years. And then, you can also see the accumulation of the rents. So at the end of a 20-year period, we're bringing in $3,264,000. I'm going to advertise for solicitation of telecommunication proposals. We can do this in January. We'll receive proposals and review those proposals, get a recommendation to the select board, where we can issue lease notice of award, then negotiate final lease agreement with the proposer, and then the select board, according to Article 29, will conduct a public hearing for consideration and approval of the lease terms of the agreement. So those are the steps. That's the information that we plan to put out in the RFP, and hopefully get some interest. We may just get the one current tenant, we may get others, but whatever we do, receive proposals, we'll review and make recommendations to the select board.
Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Parisi. Any questions?
Just to quickly summarize, this has been a revenue stream for the town for a number of years. We're trying to preserve that with the structure of this RFP. So, a lot of what was in there was built on what we have in place right now. The financial incentives, we're building off of that moving forward for the next 20 years. I think, I don't know if Joe said it or not, but between this location and the water towers, it's about $300,000 a year that comes into the operating budget that stabilizes both school and municipal services each year.
Okay.
Good. That was good. 25 years ago. That's what we were first saying.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Move on to our
Okay, Joey, we're not looking for a vote this evening, right? We are going to be finalizing that request for proposals and putting it out in the schedule you identified, and then we would be back to the select board with award once we're ready.
That's correct.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for hanging on.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
What item are we going to? Sorry.
Oh, next item, right down.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, through you, I, after some conversation with you, provided you with some information for the board to consider with regard to a variety of board policies that might not be consistent with the agreements that the board's entered into with myself, or in some cases my predecessors as well. So we'll put those policies in draft form for the board to consider. A little uncomfortable talking too much about it. It's obviously your decision, to make. But these areas were identified. Some of the policies go back to 1983, I think, if I saw the dating. So, there's some updates that could be made that may address.
And then I'm going to open up to the board. The one thing I've noticed is that there's a lot of policies that are unfortunately not consistent with the practice, sometimes over multiple decades by multiple different boards. There's select board policies that I don't want to say get ignored, but get overlooked by the next board. Because there could be 5 totally new members, minus Steve O'Leary. Sorry, Steve, just so we can say it. And what happens is that in 10 years, it could be another board that may ignore policies that this board puts together. So what we're doing here, and I think in a way I got to give kudos to Mr. Massey for just bringing it to our attention that there's just a lot of practices right now that are just not either codified or just go against something that's already in writing and just hasn't been updated. So that's a good thing to just review it, and these are some of the things that have been caught. So I don't know if everybody got a chance in the meeting packet. I'm sure we'll talk about this again, but I'll start. Just whoever, if anybody has any questions on any of 2.6 all the way to any of these, there's 5.
Mr. Chairman, through you, I'm happy to leave the room to the folks for that.
Actually, you might be able to clarify some of the issues.
Mr. Massey, you have anything up? I'm sorry.
I would just
make a recommendation to say a few things. One is, very specific terms to a specific person in our policy. I'd say you can even make them more broad by saying, for example, vacation, you could say per contract agreement with town manager, etc. It doesn't have to say to it. This might bind North Reading later, so I'm trying to make it like the state, make it broad. Secondly, I'd like to recommend someone. I was going to say a subcommittee, but it doesn't really make sense. I don't know how that would work. Someone's got to go through these policies and scrub them. Just like I said, we don't follow half of them. So it's not going to be me, even though I already have them all highlighted here, so I can help you. But I think you got to scrub the policies. This to me, these specific policies that are in front of us are specific to one person looking out for himself, which is fine. But I think the select board needs to go through and scrub what isn't applicable, because certainly from my experience, I'm speaking to Mr. O'Leary and Mr. Wallner, is that these select board policies tend to be handpicked or cherry-picked to what works for you, but doesn't necessarily work for others. And I'd like the process to be fair.
I don't know why you're picking on us. I don't know why you're picking on us. That's kind of funny.
Oh, okay. I'd love to get into it. Mr. Wallen, thank you. Well, this all ties into you guys bringing me to a hearing, as I've stated before, and I'm getting exhausted, but that's fine. We have a meeting. You brought me to a hearing by cherry picking a select board policy that might be good for you at the time.
No, that's not correct.
Hold on, just
But-
let him finish,
no, I'm
and
not
then
done.
he's speaking broader about the policy, and then you can respond broader about the policy.
I don't think that cherry picking policies on what works for you was appropriate. I've certainly collected a lot of information since then for both of you to support this. No reason for policies if you're not going to follow them. What's the point of a town charter if you're not going to follow it? What's the point of select board policies if you're not going to follow it? This does tie back some. I'll leave it to you, Mr. Wallner.
Mrs. Gonzalez.
Yes.
No, anything on this? Mr. Walner.
Yeah, no, just to be clear, when you were nominated to do the facility master planning committee,
Can you talk about, timeout,
that's what we're talking about.
but let's talk about it from a policy standpoint,
Yeah, no,
not
we are.
a specific.
We are.
To a policy
Because
standpoint,
it
it
wasn't.
discredits the
No,
policies.
No, stop.
when you have to-
No, my turn. When we were nominating you for the facilities master planning committee, there was a very specific discussion about if there was concerns with the facility master planning committee, would you come to the select board before you came to anybody else? You discussed it back and forth, and then you agreed to it. That's
Yeah,
just your
difference of
word.
opinion, difference
That's
of
just your
opinion,
word.
Mr.
That's your,
Wallner.
no, that's not an opinion.
No, it's difference of opinion.
That's factual.
Mr.
And
Wallner,
so-
I feel very
that's-
strongly
no,
about this.
no, hold
I
on.
am happy
This
to
is
take
my-
this to the next
my
level.
floor.
And Mr. Studo and Mr. Colbert know
Okay,
exactly
Chair.
what I'm talking about.
Do I
But I
have a
feel
chance to
very
speak?
strongly about it. Mr.
Do I
Wallner,
have a chair? Do I?
Mr.
do I
Wallner,
have
it
a chance to
discredits
speak?
because you can't follow some policies and not follow the rest. You know what that does? It discredits you.
Hold on,
Thank you.
let's just breathe for a second. Here's what I'm gonna say. We can speak about it from the policy standpoint, if you can keep it as vague, without the particulars, I think that, and then I'm gonna give you your time, and then I'm gonna please allow the time, that Mr. Massey, I'm summarizing if I'm wrong, tell me if I'm wrong. He's just saying that there's a collective book of policies. Some are followed to the letter, some are not. And he's saying those inconsistencies make it difficult
to look at anything, in his opinion, in the most legitimate way. Is that a good?
That's correct. It discredits the rest of
So
policies.
that's just a summary. Now, you can speak to that summary, not to the specific of whatever happened when it was much warmer than it is outside right now.
Well, I mean, if I give my word, I stand behind my word. When I make a promise or a commitment to one committee, I don't need a policy to like do that. That's just me, that's my integrity, that's what I bring forward. When someone makes a promise and then they break the promise, you are responsible for breaking that
What
promise.
promise
That has
did I
nothing to
break?
do with policies.
What
That
promise
has,
did I break?
Hold on,
No,
that's
I
not.
want to know. Don't put
it's
something
not a
out there
policy.
that says
No,
I
you
broke a
promised.
promise. Say the promise.
You
Hold on,
promised
all right,
the
all right.
board.
No,
We're gonna end up skipping, I'm gonna,
Mr. Chair, you cannot allow someone on the board to attack another board member and
but
not be
that's why I'm
specific.
trying to
I
stop
didn't
it.
say
Go
specific.
ahead, go ahead, say it.
I've already
Give
said
your,
it.
give
I've
your
said it
example,
twice.
Mr. Wallner.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not hard to understand.
Okay,
I've
Oh,
already
you
said it
you
twice.
can't say it again because you got enough.
Okay. Do we need more time for something else?
How about you, Mr. O'Leary?
No, I mean, that's pretty straight.
I'm
It's
gonna
not
call
difficult.
in a second.
It's really not difficult. It's
I'm
very
still
easy.
waiting for you to
It's
finally
very
get
simple, and
details.
it's depending on your.
Just like you
Okay, we're
typically do,
gonna-
just like you typically do, Mr. Wallner. You
Okay,
say
so-
things that don't stick, and you hope they stick, just like the appointment policy you made. Hope this sticks. I'm gonna tell Nick he's wrong. Well, I'm gonna tell you that you certainly are wrong.
Okay, again, you're just.
Okay, no. Time out. Now I get to, just, hold on.
I'm happy to take this to the next step. so.
The select
Trust me,
board,
it's all prepared for you.
the select board policies that we were talking about actually were very specific, but on a broader point, Mr. Massey brought up that. Mr. O'Leary, do you have something to say on the
I
policies?
thought that we were going to discuss this more, this evening is what's before us.
So if you can do me a favor and stick to it, I'd really much appreciate it.
That was my intention. I wasn't
Okay.
intention to talk about
Go ahead.
anything else other than, obviously we need to, when we have a contractual agreement with whoever holds the position of town administrator, if the policy is inconsistent with the contract, there should at least be language in the contract that references contract language superseding any policy that's here, because that's more binding, obviously. Policy is, as I've been told over the years, is guidance and agreement amongst the board members at any given time as to how things should proceed and be handled. It's not truly binding, it's not a legal standard, it is a guideline that the board has agreed should be followed. Right? And policies have been ignored, have been waived, specifically waived. That is when we take some sort of an action that is contrary to what a specific policy, which is more bold than some of the other minutiae that we have in the policies. We actually take a vote to waive policy and take whatever action we're going to take. And collectively, we make that determination. There have been other times when, again, this is more on the broader subject of the policies itself, where the majority of the board has chosen to ignore a policy in total, even though it has been brought to their attention, and proceed in a fashion which is contrary to policy. That's what's happened. But again, what we're told in those particular situations from town council time and time again over the years is policy is just that. It's a guidance from previous boards and current boards as to how things are going to be handled by the board in specific areas. But specific to this contract language that we have with whoever holds the position of town administrator, obviously our policy should reflect the terms and conditions that we've agreed to. And if it's, and if it's contrary, then there should just be either we revise the entire policy, or the policy is to refer to the contract agreement as negotiated by the board for the term and conditions agreed to for the term of the contract. These were, again, I don't know what year these were, 1981. Again, the town administrator's position came in back in the late 60s, 1969, so, so we were still in our infancy stages as far as having people come, and again, at one point early on in our charter change where we took on the managers, town administrator, form of government, we went through a significant number of town administrators over the time. So it's, so it'd be, we went through a lot of town administrators. We kind of a revolving door at some point. But, these things reflected what was going on at the time, what the concerns, individual concerns and collective concerns of the board members in relation to the whoever held the position should be, and how much we wanted to have control of checks and balances and day-to-day activities and what he's doing, what he's not doing, or what she's not doing. It's gotten to the point, I believe, that during the course of contract negotiations over the last several years, not just with Mr. Gilberto, but his predecessor, the predecessor before that, the terms and conditions and benefits have significantly changed. And our policy should just, I believe the policy in this particular area should just be general and refer to any contractual agreement that we've agreed to.
Perfect. So, to that point, you have assignment utilization, equipment, town-owned vehicle identification. So, to your point, to align with contractual obligations, where in Mr. Gilberto's contract does it speak to this? Where?
Well, it doesn't specifically speak to it. And what is the expectation? Am I expecting him, if he leases his own vehicle, in his contract, we got a deal here where he can either lease a vehicle on his own, or we provide one.
Again, just more words to hope they stick.
Do you want me to finish my thought, or you just want to argue about it? I'm not looking to argue anything here, other than there's a modification that needs to be
made. You want to
made.
align the contract with the policies, and I'm asking, you're putting a policy in here. Where in the contract does it
And is
say
that a
about this?
reasonable, again, you don't understand the genesis of that discussion or that policy either. I happened to be there when we were talking about fire chiefs, and we were talking about, they have a car, we have a fire chief who didn't want to have the emblem on the car. He just liked the red vehicle and the blue plate, thinking that should be enough. And then we had some members of the board that wanted, the town seal the size of the thing, of the sign, of the size of the seal on the comment on the side of a vehicle. We had the extremes. And most of it was personality driven. Are you going to interrupt me? You're trying to interrupt. You're not listening.
It's just unfortunate because I get defended.
You're not listening.
You guys get defensive.
You're not listening.
Mr. O'Leary, I am listening. Don't.
No, you're not. I think you're listening when you're talking.
Hold on.
Talk to me like
Mr.
you're
Chairman,
my
I am all set. I
Excuse-
believe that, again, there should be some modifications to the policy, and if we're worried about having a, and again, this is a very big issue here, if we're worried about having a seal on the town administrator's car, then I think we have more important things to worry about. And if we're worried about whether the policy says it should have something on there, then we should remove it, because that's stupid.
It's bigger than that. I'm gonna have the final word on this because
It's bigger than
it's getting too hot. Here's what I'm gonna say. There is merit to a lot. I think that as policies come up are inconsistent, let's fix them. Let's have a vote. Let's do what we can do. And the reason I say that is because guess what? In a year, whatever the new board is could come in and they could redo all of it. And I think that is the point about maybe waive this, because a new board could come in, majority comes in and says, yeah, that thing you guys looked at in February, we don't like it.
That's fine. You can do that.
But what I mean, I'm not saying we're gonna do it, but I'm just saying, no,
New
this is
boards
it.
can do it.
So the
That's what
point
happens.
is
It gets
that
revisited
I
over
think
time.
that.
So how about this? The small wireless policy that we just had, where does that get stored? Does it get put in the select board policies? I can't find it. I can't find nothing since 1986. So where are these policies that we're voting on, where are they going?
What do you mean the wireless?
What are you talking about?
A little while, he knows.
No,
I'm sorry,
we don't know.
I think you're talking about the small cell wireless policy that was adopted in December. And so they get added to the board's policies, which are posted on the website. That's really where they're retained at this point in time. We have had some issues with trying to update that, but it is generally updated. The last couple of policies may not be fully integrated yet because of the problems, but that's where they go. The select board webpage is a tab for board policies, and they get integrated into there.
Yeah, I'm not gonna ask for further discussion on this. I think that, I think everybody got their point across, and I hope they did.
I don't even know what I don't know if I got my point across, because I don't know what point I was trying to make.
The point is that it's just something where we need to be more consistent with our policies. That's how I'm gonna summarize it. And as we identify inconsistencies, let's fix them through whatever process, and then, you know what? If a future board throws it out, it is what it is. Like, what are we gonna do about it? I mean, I'm on the board, I'm not gonna storm the gates of the select board meeting in 3-4 years if I'm not here saying, how dare you did this, but at least be consistent, that I can agree with.
So can I offer a solution? How did the process for doing that?
To the
Do our
policies.
homework?
Yeah, because the last one who tried to change policy was me, and it was over appointments because we had a big blow up over your brother and that thing. And so I came forward with the written guidelines of what we had written down, and I redlined what I thought the changes was to be. I handed it off to the chair, who rejected it and said we weren't going to work on it.
I wasn't here.
So, I know you weren't, so I'm saying, but that's what I'm suggesting is if someone sees a policy and they want to change it, or they think they should amend it, bring forward the place you want to change, redline it, bring it to the attention of the board, and let's vote on it.
I'm not going to
Great
assign,
suggestion. I hope you do that. Thank you.
I'm not going to assign any work. If
I'm not
anybody
saying, I'm
wants-
saying
if
if
anybody
you're
wants to
compelled to do it.
In
Yeah.
between, I don't know where people find the time. I mean, I already do about 100 hours a month to this, and I can't add any more, but I'm willing to, you know, as long as we can squeeze it in to try to figure out exactly how to run the town, because we're running out of money. I mean, I guess we can stick it as an agenda item for 4 hours. So, Mr. Gilberto, I think we are on, we did legal bills, so we are on appointments. Mr. Massey, whenever you're ready for the motion, please.
Actually, no, we are not on appointments.
So, excuse me, we're going to have a first reading on,
Oh, you have to read it?
we're going to have a first reading on the policy?
Do we read the whole thing?
These
It's
policies,
normally a vote to approve a first
Oh,
reading.
vote to approve the reading.
That's
Sorry,
generally
what
what
is
it
that, Mass?
and this reflects the necessary changes.
Whenever we're ready.
As I see it.
As you see it.
Right. Again, they're your policies, not mine.
I know, right.
We'll
Yeah.
vote and like everything.
Just voting that we read it?
Correct. The first reading. So we're looking at all of them.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the first reading of amendments to Select Board Policies 2.6, 2.7, 2.8, 4.2, and 4.3.
Motion by Mr. Massey, second by Mrs. Gonzalez. Any further discussion?
Yeah, just trying to see what else I can fit in here. I guess I will redline.
Any further discussion?
No.
Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I see that.
Opposed?
Nay. Who seconded that?
Mrs. Gonzalez.
Can I just ask a question? In relation to, so your position is you don't want to change the policy?
Mr. Chair, can we move on?
No,
I'm
this-
gonna.
No, I just want to understand if he's,
He said no, take it as what
I
it
mean,
is.
listen,
okay.
listen. It is pretty easy to understand where I am coming from. It doesn't take an elementary student to pick it up, Mr. O'Leary.
Well, I'm not as bright as you think I am, and I appreciate the credit you're giving me.
I think you're very much better than you are.
So it's, the thing is,
condescending
the
nonetheless.
policy was put before us for revision at a first reading, and either you're in favor of revising the policy as presented or not. If not, what else would you like? Are you going to leave the one in place, or you have some
Look,
other
hey,
suggested changes to
listen.
this policy?
I've given you an opportunity, both of you, an opportunity to end this, and I want to
end
move
what?
forward.
To end what? I guess I'm not in the middle of anything here.
Okay, we're gonna move on, or we're gonna skip to item 16.
But that's a good
My
phrase,
point is-
moving
no,
on.
That's it. Can we have some respect for the chair? I'm trying to be as lenient as possible, but it seems like,
The chair's also got to let the elected board members have a conversation when a topic is up.
Mr. Massey, can I please have the motion, item 12?
Mr. Chairman, I move to place in nomination the following names for appointments as associate members to the Conservation Commission for terms to expire on December 31st, 2025. 3 openings, Michael Marchand and Robin Wilson.
Second?
Motion by Mr. Massey, second by Mr. O'Leary. Excuse me. Liaison is...
Me. That'd be me. That'd be me. Again, you've seen a whole list of names of people who had expressed an interest in the Conservation Commission over the last couple of months or several months. Some of them have been appointed to other boards, committees, and commissions and no longer have an interest of serving as an associate member on the Conservation Commission. Some people have been contacted, and since the board has already filled the full membership, didn't have an interest in the associate membership. So we're down to 2 people for 3 positions, and we now have 3 associate members positions because one of the associate members was elevated to the full membership position. So, but this gives us a pretty good complement to get everybody on board. And so we appreciate Mr. Marshall and Ms. Wilson's willingness to serve as an associate member, and they're enthusiastic about it and looking forward to being appointed. So I would recommend Michael Marchand and Robin Wilson.
Any further discussion?
Just other than, again, I'd like to acknowledge Laurie Checkle's past service all the way up until the end of the year through the interviewing process here and vetting process, and truly grateful for her service and grateful for these people for stepping forward.
So roll call. Mr. O'Leary.
Michael Marchand, Robin Wilson.
Mr. Wallner.
Michael Marchand, Robin Wilson.
Mr. Massey.
Michael Marchand, Robin Wilson.
Mrs. Gonzalez. And the chair is Michael Marchand, Robin Wilson.
Mr. Chairman, I move to place a nomination following names for appointment as full members to the Commission on Disabilities for term to expire on December 31st, 2027. 2 openings: Gina Moran, Kathleen Logan, Rebecca Griffin, Marissa Morello, and Thomas Gandura.
Okay, and I'm
Sorry. I need a second.
second, sorry.
Motion by Mr. Massey,
Second.
second by Mr. Wallner. Mr. Wallner.
Yep, so Rebecca Griffin and Marissa Morello were previously on there, so they shouldn't really be on here because they're no longer involved. They left the committee. Gina Moran is who I'm recommending. I haven't spoken to Kathleen or Thomas, and as a reminder, we're putting out an ad in the paper. So before I went further than Gina, I wanted to get more candidates available to us. Gina Moran had served before. She's an excellent person to have on this committee. One of the strongest people I've ever had. She was not planning to renew, but she just came back in the last week and said that she'd really like to, and her time has become freed up to do it. So I'm recommending Gina Moran.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, why do we only have citizen activity forms just for Gina Moran?
I don't hear the question.
Mr. Pretty obvious question.
I'm going to guess that they just weren't included in the packet. They should have been in the packet, the December 16th meeting is my guess.
They were in the previous packet.
If we want to pull them up from there, it's just an oversight. But if we want to take a moment and pull them up from that packet, they should be there, and if they're not, then happy to forward them.
Yeah, I think we've got 2 openings, right? Let's fill them.
That's not quite how it works.
Well, that's fine. If he wants to give 2 names, he can. It's his choice.
Yes, that's right. And why doesn't that work?
No, we're not going to have a discussion why it doesn't work. Mr. Massey, if you want to give 2 names, you can. If he only wants to recommend one, he can. We're not going to do it with this one. So you can take your time to looking at the CFAs. I will allow it.
So make me respect it.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. Mr. O'Leary,
Gina Moran.
Mr. Wallner,
Gina Moran?
Mr. Massey,
Gina Moran and Thomas Gandura.
Ms. Gonzalez, and the chair is Gina Moran.
Thank you.
Gina Moran has been appointed. Move on to minutes for the
closed session minutes for the December 2nd, 2024 meeting.
Second?
Motion by Mr. Massey, second by Mr. O'Leary. Any further discussion?
I have to abstain on
Okay. All those in favor?
I'm sorry, any further discussion? Is these minutes as amended? Or are they
What's
the original?
No, the ones in the back. Yeah.
Okay.
So they were updated twice,
Yes.
once on Friday morning, once this morning, I
Yes.
believe. So they would be as amended in those packets.
Who updated it?
You provided up comments on Thursday night and Friday morning, Mr. Wallner over the weekend, that were reflected in the version this morning in the center.
Mr. Wallen, didn't he edit those to the 16th? I was told only the 16th got edited after me. So I can only.
Oh, I may have the date wrong. I'm sorry, I
Okay.
apologize. I may have the date wrong. As a matter of fact, Mrs. McNeil sent an email with the correct date after I sent the wrong date.
She did.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
it. One abstain.
One abstain.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to, I have not had the time to review December 16th, 2024 meeting minutes. I'd like the time to review those, please. You know, I used to get the meeting minutes ahead of time to be able to give edits. I have stopped after like twice. If that can happen again, it would eliminate the last meeting I kicked and this meeting there.
We will do our best to reinstate that now that Ani is here and when we have more staff capacity in the office. But I believe it ended when Karen retired and Jen was doing both jobs.
And I'll just we'll reconfirm again that we are not in violation of the open meeting because we have, so the third meeting,
After.
which would put us.
The town meeting, actually the town meeting,
The town meeting?
because you'll meet on whatever date we determine instead
Oh,
of.
we could do it at the next meeting.
You could,
Fine.
yes. Yep.
That's what I mean.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. I'll honor that, yep. Okay. Review meeting schedule.
Yeah, so the reason we had that on was first, just to remind everybody, we have a meeting with the Finance Committee and School Committee on Wednesday evening in the distance learning labs at, is it 6:30 PM, Mr. Chairman, we
Yes.
settling at?
Oh, I had it at 6:30.
6:30.
So 6:30 PM in the distance learning lab. That will be in person only. There won't be a virtual component, although we will try to work with NORCAM to have them cover and record the meeting. The second thing is we were able to find a date that worked for everybody to move the January 20th meeting, which conflicts with the holiday, to January 21st. However, the Planning Commission already has a scheduled hearing that evening in this room, so I think we should honor that fact and unfortunately try to find another date for the meeting. Keep in mind that meeting will end up being the warrant article informational hearing for the public as well, so we need to make sure we do it before the 27th.
Can those do, can everyone do the 22nd, Wednesday?
What are we changing?
The meeting that we had moved
The
from,
CPC already has the room, pretty much, so we.
on January 21st, Mr. Massey, we had moved the 20th to the 21st. They are going to be meeting that evening in here for, I believe, a couple of hearings as well. So we're looking for another date before January 27th.
I can do this the 22nd.
I can do the 23rd. I can't do the 22nd.
You can't do the 23rd?
I can't do the 22nd.
You can't do the 22nd.
I can do the 23rd.
You do the 23rd?
Thursday, yeah.
Sorry, Can you do the 23rd, Mr. Massey? Just, I'll look at one.
Thursday, the 23rd. What time of day are we doing it? 6:30, 7? What do we need?
Be our regular meeting time.
Yeah.
Regular? Okay.
6:30, plan on 6:30?
So we've done it.
Okay, yeah, I can make it
We
work.
could do it at 6:30 if that's what the board wants to do.
Well, I don't know. Are you talking about having an executive session ahead of time for anything? Or? I mean, that's the only reason we stopped before.
Only
7.
for the approval of minutes. That's the only thing. I don't know that it'll be necessary for any other purpose at that point. So hopefully it'll be a brief agenda focused on the warrant article hearing, since we'll be meeting in 4 days after that.
So, what time we saying? 7?
Say 7, unless something comes up that we have to do earlier.
Okay.
Mr. Gilberto, your report?
I don't have any comments tonight.
Okay. Mr. Massey?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Massey, second by Ms. Gonzalez. Any further discussion?
Just a quick question. Are we going to have clickers at the special
We
town
will
meeting?
not, nope.
Not going to be ready?
The bylaw has not been approved by the Attorney General, at least it wasn't as of late last week, and we opted not to proceed with procuring them on a speculative nature, not knowing whether it was going to be approved. So we will not have them. And I know a question has come up about people raising their hands versus voice vote, but our bylaw does say voice vote, so.
That's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.